welcome to another episode of We Read It One Night, the podcast where two sisters chat about smooching books. This week, we're beginning our journey into Eclipse by Stephenie Meyer. Edward and Bella are back and more angsty than ever, and the plot of this book can basically be boiled down to a dick measuring contest meets a love triangle. We get into a long-winded discussion about geese, give you our pitch for a sapphic crime-fighting spin-off series, and decide that every character in this book is actually a villain. While you're listening, drop us a rating and review, and enjoy the show. Okay, let's just jump right in. Hello.
Hello.
That's right. We're back with Eclipse, the most unnecessary book in the entire Twilight Saga.
And a book that I literally cannot, like my brain, similarly to how I cannot make my brain remember what Joe Alwyn's face looks like. Like every time I see him, it's a new experience. The same with this book. Like I read it, I immediately just like forget everything. Like we just read it. I have notes on it, but like, will I remember anything about the plot a week from now? Probably not. I think I figured out what it is. It's that there is so little plot in this book. And that doesn't necessarily like it's because it's so we get so much like random backstories in this. And that's not a bad thing. Like I remember all those backstories like in isolation. Like I remember like what happened to Rosalie. I remember that Jasper's a fucking like
We'll
yeah,
talk
okay.
about that when it comes up.
I remember like the third wife and like the tribal legends, but like there's so little that like actually happened that needs to happen. And we were trying to figure out like, is there anything that happens in Eclipse that's like necessary? Could we just have skipped to Breaking Dawn? And I guess like they have to get engaged, like Edward and Bella have to get engaged, like so that they could have the wedding. But like other than that, it's really actually, I mean, there's a few things that I was surprised we didn't find out about until now, like imprinting. I don't know.
Oh yeah, there was a lot where I was like, well, I was constantly throughout the book, even just like within like just the plot of this book, I was like, wait, they don't figure this out until now.
Right.
Like I thought we've known this the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the thing. It's like I remember all that stuff. I just don't remember that it comes from Eclipse.
Yeah.
Like because Eclipse just feels so like
well. According to Stephenie's website, which I just read the FAQ for this book because I wanted to make sure we didn't miss out on any bonus content. Unfortunately, we don't get any great scenes in which Edward is, for example, rolling around in an attic with rats as an outtake of this book. No outtakes for this one. But the FAQ, she was like, this book is important because it's supposed to show that like Bella like has thought through like all the consequences or whatever of deciding to be a vampire and like what she's gonna give up and like she like does have a choice because like she has Jacob, so she like actively is like, no, like I'm choosing to be with Edward, which like I understand to an extent, but also Jacob's not a good choice either.
No, and like why are her choices limited to like when she's a fucking teenager? Like
Stephenie, why can't she just go to Dartmouth? Why don't she just take Edward's bribing her way into Dartmouth and go there and not have to do anything?
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
Okay. It's character driven, this book. It's not plot driven.
Yeah, sure. But
I mean, none of the books are fucking plot driven.
Yeah.
Like nothing happens. There's no like plot except for Actually, I take it back. I feel like if anything, this book is technically the most plot driven because it has the overarching like the threat of Victoria is throughout the entire book, whereas in the other books it's like you don't really get the big bad until the end.
Well, in Breaking Dawn it's like the first half is like Bella's pregnancy.
Yeah, but the big bads are ultimately the Volturi.
Yeah, but
and we think the Volturi has been solved as soon as Bella becomes a vampire. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess. But yeah.
Eclipse is like the most narratively sound and both the most unnecessary.
Yeah. Another thing I realized, like, I don't know if this is a good place to say this, but like, even if Bella had picked Jacob, like, her whole thing was like, Edward was like, why don't you just stay human and we'll just stay together until you die and then I'll kill myself, right? But like, and Bella was like, no, I don't want to be like looking physically way older than you and like probably get mistaken for like a pedo. Like, what?
Yeah.
But
even though Edward's the pedo.
Yeah. Wouldn't the same thing happen with Jacob? Like, you know, do you think Jacob would have stopped transforming for Bella even though she's not his, like... Okay, I
Yeah,
guess.
I think he would have. I have thoughts on that, but I feel like we should
Okay.
jump in. But first, I would like to say the note that I have been keeping in my notes app for this book because I forgot to bring it up. I like realized it after we finished talking about New Moon, and I want to say it, so it's been like sitting in my notes app for like months until we do this book, and it's about Mormonism. Surprise, surprise, and how the Twilight vampires have like when they drink humans, like they're basically incapable of doing anything but like draining a human dry. And even
Right.
if they don't drain the human dry, like they're gonna leave venom and then the human's gonna become a vampire. Like there's basically no way to drink human blood like a normal fucking, not like crazy binger.
Yeah.
But versus like, for example, the Vampire Diaries vampires who do definitely just like take little sippy sips and like
Mhm.
go on their merry way, which seems like a
Mhm.
much more sustainable way. And I was like, oh my God, it's a metaphor for lust. And that just
Mhm.
really came to the forefront in this book because horny Bella, ooh, she comes out to play in this book. Horny Bella is like the main
Mhm.
character. Like, I love it. She's constantly trying to take her clothes off. It's amazing. So, yeah, anyway, basically, I
Yeah.
think if you want to be a cool vampire, you should fuck all the time, is basically the message. If you want to be like an ethical vampire, you know what I mean? Like, you should fuck.
Yeah.
Ethical vampires fuck.
Yeah, definitely. And something that like I have seen, I don't know if this is true. I don't want to like slander Mormons too much, but I think this might actually be true. Like I've just heard it from multiple sources that like fornication or like, basically sex outside of marriage is like worse than murder
Ugh.
in Mormonism, or like or like at least as bad as, which is just like I feel like that is also like another angle to look at it from. And Edward even says like he doesn't he like impliedly puts them on the same level when he's like, Bella, like I've broken every other rule, like I've murdered people, like can't I just like have this one rule that I
Yeah.
don't break? Anyway, we start off this book with an angry letter from Jacob. I thought it was interesting that they chose to get a new narrator for Jacob just for like the two parts. Like it's just this in the
But he
epilogue.
ends up being the narrator. I'm pretty sure it's
That's
the same
true.
narrator as Breaking Dawn, Jacob.
Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting choice. I guess it was a big deal by that point.
Yeah, they could afford two narrators for Eclipse.
And it's like an angry, scratchy letter. Like they've been passing notes
Okay.
back and forth.
No, they haven't. Okay, so what it is, it's a letter. And the first, there's like 5 lines. It's like, Bella, I can't talk to you. And like that's crossed out. And then it's like, Bella, it hurts too much. Like, and then that's it's like cut off lines. Okay. So like he is clearly like started writing the letter and then he crosses it out. And then like he tries to start again, which is normal, right? Like you're trying to write a letter. You're not trying to hurt someone's feelings. You're trying to like keep emotion out of it. You're going to write several drafts, except Jacob the dickhead doesn't rip it off. He leaves
No.
them on the letter so Bella can read every single mean thing he said before his final note. I'm like, do you think just like one cross through is gonna like make
I
it so she
know.
can't read? Like, what, Jacob? Like, I understand that like you don't have a lot of money, but like surely you have more than one piece of paper that you could write this letter on.
It's like she could have she obviously does it at the end with the epilogue where we just get it straight from Jacob's perspective. We could have just gotten a mini like perspective. She really wanted this to be like part of it. We could have just gotten from Jacob's perspective, writing the letter and then being like, no, I don't want to say that, and then like ripping it.
It's just it's it's a choice. Like, listen, say what you want about Stephenie Meyer, but like she is not afraid to take risks in writing these books. Like we have like the months passing in New Moon. Like we have this
She's not afraid to share information in a way that does not have any
narratively.
cogency in the real world.
But basically, Jacob's ignoring her. Basically, Bella's like keeps trying to reach out to him, and Jacob is like, "We can't be friends." Blah, 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 blah. And somehow Bella and everybody else in this book and the book itself twist this around to like as something Bella should feel guilty for. Like, oh, you're cutting Jake out. And I'm like, she is actively reaching out. She's calling him on the phone.
Right.
She's sending him notes through Billy and Charlie. Like she's trying to keep this friendship and Jacob is ignoring her. And somehow that's Bella's fault after Jacob betrayed her.
Right.
By narking on her.
Yeah.
Like, what? And wait. Sorry. I feel like we should, for those of you, if it's been a while since you listened to the New Moon episode, we ended that episode with Jacob showing Charlie Bella's motorcycle. so that she would get in trouble. So like
Mhm.
Jacob should be in the doghouse, pun intended, but he's not.
Yeah, and there's, like, literally no reason Jacob couldn't come visit her, like, even, like, for the first half of this book, it's gonna be, like, Bella absconding to La Push to see him, and that makes sense, like, if he's ignoring her and she wants to get his attention, like, sure, that's the only way, but, like, after that, there's absolutely no reason he couldn't be coming to
No.
her, you know? It's not like the werewolves are, like, they can't they're, like, confined to their 1 square mile
Oh, no,
territory, they
but
can
the Forks, the town is Cullen territory, technically.
I
We
no.
learned that in New Moon when Alice comes
No.
back. Jacob's like, if the Cullens are back, I'm not supposed to be here.
No, they can't patrol as wolves, but, like, as humans, they can definitely go there. Like, come on, he goes to the school. Like, he's not allowed to just not go to town. Like, that wouldn't make any sense. Why would the wolves, like,
Yeah.
ever agree to that? Right? Again, they'd be barred
Yeah.
from the hospital, like, literally, not just, like, because they don't wanna risk it. Like, no. So, yeah, Charlie, as previously alluded to, he's about to lay on a big guilt trip. Bella's, like, reading this in her room, and she smells, like, something burning downstairs.
Wait, Charlie, he almost blows up the house. Like, this isn't
God.
even just a fire. Like, this man literally almost sets off a bomb in his microwave because he puts a jar with a metal lid directly in the microwave. And I'm like,
It's
how?
closed.
How are we supposed to believe? But it's the metal jar. This is the key
Yeah.
point is the metal lid. And I'm like, how has this man survived for 40 years? Like, how the fuck
I know.
before
It's like
Bella if he can't
weaponized
even fucking
incompetence.
heat up pre-made like store-bought spaghetti sauce?
That's the real reason Renee and Charlie broke up, because they were both just, like, constantly trying to use weaponized incompetence against each other, but because they were both doing it, it just, like, things constantly kept getting set on fire.
Exactly. But I feel like it says I was reading or watching this video or something about how like in sitcoms, the more seasons sitcoms get, you'll have characters that like get narrowed down to like one
Yeah, it's called
personality
something after
trait.
that Simpsons character. It's called,
Yeah, what is this? Flanders?
Flanderization, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like Joey for like Flanders become like the super stereotypical Christian, like Joey from
Right.
Friends just being
And
like
yeah,
having no brain cells by
yeah.
like the 10th season. And I was like, is this happening to Charlie? Like
Yes,
he's just
because
becoming more and more incompetent.
yes, because I even wrote down, like, he says, "What did I do wrong?" And I was like, I appreciate Ileana's dunce voice for
Yeah.
Charlie in this scene. Like, she literally, "What did I do?"
Like, this is a grown ass man and he doesn't know not to put metal in the microwave.
Oh my God.
Oh, Charlie.
And so Charlie, his scheme is to, like, make a nice dinner for Bella to, like, butter her up. It turns out to just be, like, a bunch of mashed together noodles and, like, this sauce. And Bella has to plate it up and, like, cut it with a steak knife. Like, he doesn't
Yeah.
even, like, serve her. Like,
Because he doesn't stir the noodles so they all clump together. And the way Stephenie describes this is that as if not stirring it will cause them to fuse
yeah.
together in like a hardened state. And I would just like to say how much of an impact this had on my pasta making, like to this day, where I'm like so diligent about mixing it because I'm like, I don't want to be like Charlie and all of the pasta sticks
See,
together.
I'm, like, not that diligent at all. I realize you don't really have to stir it. Like, maybe, like, once in the beginning, and then you don't
I
have
know.
to. But the way that they will fuse together is if you leave them in the strainer for too long. Like,
Yes.
that's the danger. Like, you can't just
And
let
you
it
don't want to
sit.
rinse your pasta because that
No.
gets rid of all of the the glue and whatever.
Starch.
The starch that makes it
Yeah.
not stick together.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, that was like just like a really like became a core part of my cooking personality was the specific scene in which Charlie fuses together the pasta and Bella has to cut it with a steak knife.
I realized how much, like, quote unquote Italian food they eat in Twilight, because,
Well, 'cause
like,
it's
in this
easy.
book, well, sure, but I just mean, like, we have this scene, like, later on, like, Esme gets Bella some, like, the good Italian food. There's, like, some other,
La
I don't
Bella
know.
Italia from Port
That's what I
Angeles.
assume, of course. The good one from Port Angeles. Anyway, so Charlie is trying to guilt trip Bella, basically. And honestly, he's not wrong at this point at all. Yes, his goal, I mean, yeah, no, he's just not wrong, period. Like, he basically is
Yes.
like, Edward, you disappeared for 3 days with him. He also left you. He sucks.
You fell into an extreme depressive state. This is
Right.
not a healthy relationship.
Also, just outside of that, he's like, you used to have friends besides the Cullens. Like, you have other friends besides the Cullens, or at least you used to. Why don't you see any of them? And Bella's basically like, well, Angela has a boyfriend too. She's always with Ben. I'm like, that's not normal, Bella. Like, why? Like, Charlie's basically, you shouldn't dump all your other friends for your boyfriend. It's not nice. and your life would probably be better if you had some other people in it. And I'm like, at this point, like Charlie is 100% like, what?
He's 100% in the right. However, there are elements of this that still bother me because Charlie is like I said, Charlie is acting as if Bella is choosing not to hang out with Jacob instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how the fuck? Like, Bella is getting Charlie to pass notes to Billy
He's
for
involved in
Jacob.
this.
How the fuck does he not know that? Like, there's only one phone in this house. Clearly, Bella's been using it to call Jacob. Like, how the fuck does Charlie not know that Jacob's the one icing her out? Like, how dare you accuse Bella of this? Also, Charlie's like, isn't Edward up to a little healthy competition? Yuck, yuck, yuck. And I'm like, and I'm just, okay, no, listen. We know that Edward does a bunch of really fucked up shit to prevent Bella from seeing Jacob in the beginning because he's being an overprotective dickwad. But Charlie doesn't know that. And I'm like, what about Jacob being her supposed best friend, not wanting to hang out with her because she has a boyfriend? Right. Well, Jacob, from Charlie's perspective, Jacob should be totally in the wrong here. And it's very rich of him to like be taking Jacob's side in this situation.
Right. No, and also like just up for some healthy competition. Like that, it wouldn't be healthy for anyone. Like who would that be healthy for? It wouldn't be healthy for Jacob because like,
it's not healthy for
healthy for Bella. It's like, is it because is there like some kind of is there like a pandemic in this universe that we're not hearing about? So like all the sports are like temporarily paused. So Charlie needs like another source of competition to watch. Like, is that what it is? It's
no, because Charlie. Later on in the book he goes to watch the game at Billy's.
I know it's a live game. Yeah, I know.
He's Charlie is just so fucked up. Yeah. Also in the scene we learn about there's been a bunch of murders in Seattle. They think it's a serial killer. A lot of murders.
A lot of murder. I never realized how many. There were 10 the first week, 13 the second week, and now 23. And that something the news. So there's also have to be a lot of like people just going missing, like not being murdered because like the newborn vampires, and like that's not mentioned. It's a lot of fucking murder, like serial kill. Like what? It's just murder. I feel like if that was happening, I don't know.
That would be, I feel like the National Guard would be called in at that point. Like that level of murder is like, that's a war. Like that's not
like even if it's not one person, even if it's like, even if it's
that's like a terrorist attack.
Yeah. And they're like, their bodies are charred. Like they all look exactly the same.
They've been burned beyond recognition.
And look like they've had like major trauma before death. Like, what?
It's
insane amount of people. Like, what?
But the way that this introduced is like Charlie's just like, Bella, don't go over to Seattle because it's dangerous there, and like no other concern about like it's bonkers. Also, just as a side note, so Rachel, I don't know if you want to talk about how each Twilight book is apparently like a classic piece of classic literature.
Yeah. So I learned this like somewhat recently. I mean, obviously we know New Moon is Romeo and Juliet retelling, like, you know, duh. This one is obviously Wuthering Heights because they've mentioned it so fucking much and like and like insert. But honestly, I thought the times that she like inserted quotes, I was like very impressed at how like non clunky it was.
No,
and maybe I just they talk so weirdly in general, but yeah, it definitely worked. I don't know what the fuck Breaking Dawn is. I forget. I can look it up. I'm pretty sure the first book is Pride and Prejudice.
Very, very loose.
Oh, it's all very loose. Yeah, I mean, except for New Moon, but
loosey goosey. Yeah.
Yeah. So Twilight is Pride and Prejudice. New Moon is Romeo and Juliet. Eclipse is Wuthering Heights. Breaking Dawn is A Midsummer Night's Dream. Oh, because they mentioned that a few times here too. They're like setting it up.
There's foreshadowing. Yeah. Oh, I see. Because he's talking. We're talking about specifically in regards to imprinting. That it's like how the fairies make everyone fall in love with each other. Interesting. Wow, Stephenie, that's a deep cut that I didn't expect from that. Nice.
It is.
But I bring this up. So obviously, like we said, this book is Wuthering Heights. And Bella in her head, she's like, I've been reading Wuthering Heights. And she calls it a turn of the century novel. And I would just like to say that this book is solidly in the mid 1800s. And I was like, what fucking century is turning, Bella? Like, what do you mean it's a turn of the century novel? I know it's a little thing to nitpick, but I was like, the Brontes are like decades after Austen. Stephenie, you know this. You are an English major. Like, don't tell me you don't know basic Austen Bronte chronology.
Right. It's unclear how we're supposed to like feel about Wuthering Heights. I was like, full disclosure, I've never read the entire book. I'm like, I've read like summaries. I've like done deep dives into like every aspect of it, but I've never like subjected myself to the full thing.
Don't. It's so
Yeah,
horrible.
I know. Well, especially the second half. But I was also I was looking this up yesterday. I found like a bunch of essays about like specifically Wuthering Heights as it relates to Twilight. And a bunch of people were like, "Oh, like Stephenie Meyer is doing so much damage. Like people, like this is a book about like abuse and like, you know, evil people, but like all these people reading it are going to think it's a love story. Like she's rebranding it as a love story." But I feel like that's not. I don't think that, because so many times they'll be like, "Kathy is an evil person." Like Heathcliff sucks. Like
Yeah, but also like Wuthering Heights is it's a fucked up love story. It's not a romance because it doesn't have a happy ending because they all die at the end, and like Heathcliff is continuing to manipulate his and Kathy's children. Like it ends with him being like, "Yes, I'm going to ruin their lives too." But like it is a love story. Like the heart of that book is Heathcliff and Kathy and how they're like the world's biggest assholes, but they're also like soulmates. Like it's been over a decade since I read that book, and I do remember that. And some of what really pisses me off about Wuthering Heights is because there's so many good quotes, like love quotes from it. But like if you just read that and you didn't know anything about the rest of the book, you would go in and be like, "Oh, like blah blah blah."
Don't a lot of adaptations just stop like halfway through? Like they just cut the second half at all, apparently. Because the second half is where Heathcliff like really goes off. Like that's where he like fucking rapes his wife and like, you know, kills his son.
Remember that.
Does he kill his son? And basically, like, doesn't get him a doctor.
All I know is that, like he and Kathy don't get married. Kathy marries someone else. He puts us off, becomes rich, and like comes back and marries someone else. And then
he marries Kathy's husband's sister, Isabella, specifically to torture her and get back at the husband for marrying Kathy.
Wow.
And then he immediately he like hits her, like he somehow, and why I say it's because somehow she gets pregnant with this kid, even though she's like terrified of him and like runs away from him.
Yeah,
Isabella. Everyone dies in childbirth, like of course.
Yeah, including Kathy.
And then Isabella runs away while pregnant, gives birth to the son. Heathcliff, and tries to like have him be raised by like his uncle. Heathcliff tracks him down and like uses his like legal rights as his father to get the son back and force him to live with him, and like doesn't let him like be educated, like do anything or whatever.
Yeah,
and
no, he can't read.
He has a plot to get him to marry Kathy's daughter, Kathy, specifically so that he can get the house, because his scheme is that like, that will become Linton, his son's house. And then as soon as Kathy's husband dies, like it'll become basically Heathcliff's house, and if Heathcliff can get his son to die, it'll become his house.
Yes.
Basically. So then his son is like sickly because Heathcliff had him be sickly. He doesn't get him medical care. He lets him die. He gets the house.
The son dies?
Yes. He has to. Heathcliff needs his son to die. Heathcliff basically kills his son.
There's definitely a scene in the end in which Kathy's daughter is like,
and he keeps her. Then he someone. He keeps his daughter. He keeps Kathy, young Kathy. He keeps her hostage basically, and then she falls in love with Heathcliff's like adopted brother / Kathy's brother. He had a son who was like very uneducated and like
she's teaching him to read.
Heathcliff basically keeps him like as a servant, as I think. And Kathy and him fall in love. So they end up happy at the end. Like they end up getting
but there's definitely an element in which Heathcliff, or maybe it's the housekeeper, is like, oh, Heathcliff is gonna like use her to break his heart or something. Like it's something. Like there's definitely like someone is still plotting at the end of that book. I vividly remember reading that.
Oh, really?
I vividly remember being like, oh, okay, so someone's gonna get a happy ending. And then like something being like, nope, fuckers.
Why do I know so much more about this book? But I've like never.
Because you've done deep dive. I read it 10 years ago.
I have like literally sat listening to like, this is like Taylor Swift songs and like reading quotes from this book, like crying, even though like I've never like read this.
I mean, listen, that Wuthering Heights, we've gone so off the rails, but I need to keep talking. Wuthering Heights has so many fucking good quotes, like love quotes. Like it is phenomenal, and it is so annoying. And that's the thing about the Brontes in general. They're like, each of their books I hate. I mean, I haven't read any of Anne Bronte's books, but Emily and Charlotte can go fuck themselves. Like I hate all of their books. But damn, those bitches know how to write a poemable quote. God damn it. I gotta give them props for that.
Let's to get back to this.
We're traveling back to Forks.
We do get like Edward's like, I don't know how Heathcliff and Kathy ended up being ranked with couples like Romeo and Juliet and Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. It isn't a love story. It's a hate story. And I would just like to take the opportunity to once again say that Romeo and Juliet is not a fucking
Well, it's a love. It's not a romance.
Yeah.
You could argue that it's a love story, but it's not a romance.
Why is that the comparison?
I mean, Heathcliff doesn't at one point, doesn't he try to dig up Kathy's body? At one point?
Yeah. No, really thinking back. Oh, Heathcliff? Oh, yeah, he does. He admits to that. And that's why he thinks he's being haunted. Yeah, no, he's fucking psycho. If I'm dead to you, why are you at the wake?
Yeah, okay.
You're saying my name. Anyway, listen, really thinking back, like, how did we ever trust enough to read Twilight, like the whole series all the way through as it came out? Because if Stephenie thinks Romeo and Juliet is romantic, she might very well have betrayed us.
Well, we didn't. By the time we read Twilight, Breaking Dawn was already out.
Oh, okay. But we didn't know the ending. Like, I didn't spoil it for myself. I think it's because at that point I hadn't yet experienced my seminal Gone with the Wind betrayal. That's why I didn't have trust issues yet.
I read all of that. I read Wuthering Heights. I read Gone with the Wind. I read Twilight. I read Jane Eyre for the first time. All of that was in the 6th grade. It was a real big like literary moment for me, the 6th grade. Like that's when I read all of those fuckers. But I knew that Breaking Dawn was going to have a happy ending because Rachel and I went to this summer camp. My counselor that year, the summer before 6th grade, it was my last year. She was a big Twilight fan. And I remember like sitting at like in the mess hall with her and she was like, oh my God, Breaking Dawn comes out this week. Like, oh my God. Like, I can't wait to read it. Like, I'm so excited. Like, And I was like, what is this Breaking Dawn? And I just like it totally like left my mind until like a few months later, my friend Rachel in the 6th grade was like, you have to read this book series. I picked up. Anyway, I don't even remember how we got to that.
So Bella reads
Twilight does have a happily ever after, in case you were concerned.
I mean, depending on your perspective, but yeah.
Well, okay.
If you're
in the world of the book, it's a happily ever after. Yes. In real life, it's debatable.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to know who's Heathcliff. Is it Jacob or Edward? Because Edward's the one she marries. You know, Edgar. Just saying.
Is that I don't know. I don't
Jacob
remember
is like the one who. Oh yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we're Edward compares himself to Heathcliff multiple times, but like it doesn't really make sense in the world. Anyway, Bella's like, oh, well, now that I'm not grounded, like I want to go see Jacob, and this is when Edward starts being like, the fuck no, like it's too dangerous for wolves. He's just so manipulative for like the entire.
He breaks her car so she can't drive.
Oh my God. And he tries to distract her. He's like, oh, it's your bad luck. He's like, we thought the werewolves were gone. Of course, like your bad luck turned them. Like started the werewolf gene again. And Bella's like, wait, like it's the fucking vampires. And Edward's like, oh, wow, what an interesting theory. Like we never thought of that. That's like one of those things that like we didn't, I didn't realize like wasn't common knowledge until Eclipse.
Yeah, I thought everybody knew that.
Yeah, like insanity. Although like technically, I mean, this is jumping ahead, but like the first werewolves were not triggered by vampires. Like that's not how they started. So
well, I mean, yeah, they talk about the legends.
And Edward's basically like, you're too important to me. Like, I can't imagine losing you. That's why you can't go. And this is like billed as like romantic or whatever. But like, just because like that's yeah, like you don't get to use someone's like safety as you deem it to like control them. No. Like that's not like what
big old red flag. It's not even a flag anymore. It's like a big old red tent. Like it's like a rocket, but red. It's one of those planes at the beach with a red banner.
Yeah, and this is also when the dog slurs happen. So this whole book, like, they're constantly calling the werewolves dogs and like mutts and like all of that shit, like animal things. And like Bella's like, I was used to Jacob and his slurs, bloodsucker, leech, parasite, but like it sounded different from Edward. And I just feel like I can't like verbalize it as well as like the many TikTok accounts that I follow that. But this is like just on the theme of like, I don't know, just like dehumanizing.
The fact that like the indigenous characters are animals.
It's not great.
And they're like framed as like they can't control themselves and like all of that. And like to an extent, like in universe, like yes, they can't control them. They like have problems in the beginning control, but even that is like it's like why are the only brown characters
right?
The ones who are constantly compared to animals and like called dog slurs. And yeah, it's Stephenie. And anyway, if you would like to ameliorate that, we will link below, as always, to the Quileute Move to Higher Ground Fund, which helps the Quileute, the real Quileute tribe, which did not benefit in any way from the Twilight Saga and only had their culture exploited for it. It helps them move things like their schools, the retirement center, the tribal like office and official buildings, help them move out of the tsunami zone that they are currently in. And just to emphasize again, if a tsunami were to hit that part of the Pacific Northwest, the way that the roads and the system is set up, it would be impossible for them to evacuate in time. So basically, like all the kids at school, like everyone would be wiped out. So make sure to donate to them. That'll be linked below.
Nice.
So yeah, so Bella's talking about, she has that whole interaction with Charlie. She's thinking about her human friends at school, and she's like, who am I going to be able to hang out with? And she's talking about how they're split into two groups, which she, quote, I call good and evil.
Yep.
And I'm like, she's
us and them.
Like, the evil ones are like Jessica and Lauren, and like the good ones are like Angela, and it's just so like, it's like, Bella, you're so far.
No, it's basically like the three people who forgave her like without any apology and those who didn't.
Yeah.
Like it's once again, it's like, wow, I can't believe Jessica's still mad, even though I didn't make any effort to apologize or make amends. I really don't care about her.
I checked out
all I
for
do is
months at a
her.
time.
And also like approached random like biker men and like freaked her, you know, like Jessica already did forgive her. You know what I mean?
Jessica was willing to give her a second chance, and then he fucked her over again. Yeah. Bella, I think you're in the evil category, actually. Just all by yourself, you're in the...
Yeah. So I just want to recommend, there's a great, really funny TikTok account. This girl, it's basically like if Bella Swan was like other girls, which Bella is like other girls, but if Bella like accepted that she was like other girls. Yeah. And I wrote down the username this time. It's at Jack Frost is real. Jack, Jac.
I'll link it below. Some great skits.
Yeah. Hilarious.
But yeah, so there's still the house. Edward appears. He's only allowed to be there from like 8 to 10:30 or whatever, because like Bella's grounded, but like she's not grounded anymore, but she is quick to point out. But this weirdo greets her by sniffing her wrist.
Oh my god.
No hug, not a kiss, not even a handshake. He picks up her wrist and he goes and then he comes in.
So when Edward comes in, Bella's like, his touch brought with it the strangest sense of relief, as if I've been in pain, and that pain had suddenly ceased. And like later on in the book, like it's gonna like Edward's gonna be compared to like she's like a drug. He's like a drug for her. Like she's a drug addict. Like
well,
whatever.
I mean, we've already established the drug metaphor.
Yes,
Twilight.
Sure. But I'm gonna say this is like a second, like this same username, the Bella Swan, like other girls girl. She made a video about like how she was like, yeah, I always like thought it was like obvious. Like it's like, I don't know, apparently there's like didn't read a lot of fanfic at this time, but like there's like a soulmate thing where like it's like once you like come into like a close enough proximity with your soulmate, like they are like a drug for you, like you like physically
soulmate,
right?
AUs.
Right. And so it's based, I don't know. She's like, yeah, I just thought that was like the background for Twilight too. Like kind of, I don't know, kind of
that Stephenie Meyer was using like fanfic trope, like soulmate AUs.
I don't know.
No, there's like a lot of like soulmate AUs are like you have the first words that you ever hear your soulmate say
written on
your like all, you know, that kind of shit.
Sure. Yeah.
Be in black and white until you see your soulmate. Yeah, all of that. So Edward comes in and he's being a good little boy and he's making Bella apply to college because he wants her to go to college and not become a vampire. Mm-hmm. And do you think, here's my question for you. Because, okay, so it's like, what, like May? Okay. Mm-hmm. It's like the deadlines have
passed. Oh my God, yeah.
All colleges.
Yeah.
And yet Edward is still getting her to apply, like not just like to the local community colleges or like colleges that may have like rolling throughout the year, like acceptances, but like fucking Dartmouth. Like he gets her to apply to Dartmouth, and spoiler alert, she gets into Dartmouth. And my question for you, okay, but the reason she gets into Dartmouth is, by the way, because the Cullens donate a shit ton of money, because like that's how rich people get their kids into college. And so my question for you is, do you think Lori Loughlin, Felicity Huffman, and like Carlisle have a like how to bribe your kids into good schools support group? Like, do you think there's like a
I
group
thought you
chat?
were gonna say I thought you were gonna say, do you think like Lori Loughlin read Twilight and was like brain blast?
I don't think she needed to read Twilight. I feel like I'm super rich and I can get my kid into a good school because I'm super rich is like a comment. Like that's been around.
Well, here's the thing is that actually Carlisle, it's not the same category as the Lori Loughlin thing because the
Yeah,
whole like
Carlisle's
quote unquote
above.
the whole quote unquote problem with the Lori Loughlin like backdoor college thing. The reason it was a scandal is because it wasn't just it was supposed to be like a discounted way, basically. Like it was slightly cheaper than just like buying your way in, which is totally okay. And like no one has a problem with that.
And your kid was on the sports team and like committed fraud, as opposed to like donating $2 million and getting your name in a library and getting your kid
Right. So
in.
basically we have a problem with paying $1 million, but not 2 million, basically. It's like the
Yeah.
issue. Or like we have a problem with paying 100,000, but not 2 million.
Maybe like Carla is like the leader, and then when they were like trying to do this backdoor way, he's like, "Oh, I don't associate with pores."
Yeah, pathetic.
Goodbye. You guys are just aren't rich enough for me. Okay, goodbye.
Definitely did have, yeah.
Bella just got into the University of Alaska or whatever, and Edward's like, "Oh, I got into the University of Alaska as well." And then he's like, "The wolves in Alaska are delicious," and then being like, "Oh, if the idea is so offensive to you, like we don't have to eat the wolves." And I'm like, Edward, you're talking about eating her friend.
Well, yeah, but like
No, I mean they're not, but it's still like Edward.
And then like a second later, like Edward's like, "Oh, well, we can go wherever you want. Like we can go to the north." Like Bella's like worried, like she's like worried that she's gonna want to eat people when she's a vampire. And first of all, she's like, my knowledge of those first few years is sketchy. Edward had never gone into detail, and I'm like, okay, why not? Like, why didn't you go into graphic detail? Like, don't you want to dissuade her? Like, it's not like she's gonna be like, yes, I can't wait to murder people,
to
like
eat people.
Yeah, and Edward's like, don't worry, like we'll go to the North Pole if we have to. We'll eat polar bears. And I'm like, I would think that was a joke that you're gonna like eat endangered polar bears, except that like you already eat the grizzlies, like you already eat the endangered grizzlies. So like what? And then like later on in this book, they're gonna be like, we're going hunting on a preserve in California that has a mountain lion problem, as if there's anywhere in California where mountain lions could be anywhere close to overpopulated. Like what?
No. I mean, like he's joking about eating the wolves. Meanwhile, there's like a very, very minor like reference to later on to saving the Olympic wolf. And I'm like, is it because of the Cullens on hunted it?
Yeah, no, like which is it? Like what? It's a joke or not?
Yeah. And then he also, and then this is when he breaks Bella's truck, and he's like, "You wouldn't want to start a war, would you? Because I would cross the treaty line to go after you." And I'm like, "Sir, this would not be, if a war was started, it would not be Bella's fault."
Right.
Like,
the number of absurd threats that are like put on Bella's head in this book, like this isn't even anywhere close to the worst, I feel like.
No, it's constantly. And the thing is, and Bella's constantly like, "Oh, I'm making something out," like this is related,
Yes,
like
gaslighting.
she's constantly like, "Oh, I'm making something out of nothing. Like I always make something out of nothing." And I'm like, Bella, every time you are convinced you're making something out of nothing, it turns out to actually be something really big, and you're right every time. And like, why haven't you made this connection that you're actually right every time?
Right,
and your
like starting out
and
tomorrow at
your
school.
boyfriend, not just Edward, literally every single person in her life is gaslighting her.
Right.
Every single person. There's not a single healthy person in Bella's life.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, it's primarily Edward, but yeah. So finally they're at school the next day. And Bella is, quote, nervous to the point of nausea whenever she thinks about the end of the school year because she's going to be turned into a vampire. And everyone like sits at the table together. They're all like having lunch, and Alice like has her like "That's So Raven" moment of like,
yeah,
I could see into the future. And Bella's like immediately like, oh, some shit went down. I want to ask her like what happened, but like it's so weird. Like I couldn't get a moment alone with Edward the whole rest of the day. Like he was just going out of his way to start conversations. He starts a conversation with Mike Newton of all people about his like car trouble, and like, oh, like I don't know. It's like it's so odd. Like it seems deliberate.
I must just be overreacting.
Right.
And also, Bella does see some of her human friends because she's going to address graduation announcements with Angela. Is that a thing that people ever actually did?
Oh yeah.
Do people actually send graduation announcements?
Oh. I assumed it was like party invitations. No, but I remember
like
I don't know if you
announcements.
remember, but I remember back in the day when we actually used to send like Christmas cards and like write thank you. I don't even know what we were.
Send Christmas.
Allison, I remember
our family ever sent
Allison,
Christmas
I
cards.
remember sitting at the table Like exactly what happens here for hours, like writing out handwritten shit to like everyone in the fucking church directory. It was horrible. I never want to do it again.
Oh, wow.
Like my
I really
hand
lucked
felt
out getting
my
out of
hand
that.
felt like this shit going down
I already
here.
have carpal tunnel. Like,
Like,
I didn't need it earlier.
oh god, it just takes so much time. And like what else? It was like we also had to write something. Oh, I mean, I remember having to write thank you notes to like every single person that came to my birthday party, like back when you would have like 20,
Oh,
30 kids at your birthday
I
party.
never did that.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a polite thing to do, but also like horrible. Like,
But also, like, is it a play that, like, when they're children?
yeah, that's
It's
true.
just like, whatever. Yeah, so, Edward gaslights her and is like, "No, Alice just saw Jasper, like, wanting to eat people. Like, it's nothing, like, nothing to do with you."
Yeah, Bella's like, my imagination was sadly out of control. I'd taken a totally normal afternoon and twisted it until it looked like Edward was going out of his way to keep things from me. I needed therapy. I was like, he's literally
He
gaslighting you. Like, this is
is.
literally
He
vicious.
is. He is going out of his way to keep things from you, Bella. No, don't push that feeling aside. You do need therapy, Bella, but you need therapy to learn that you're in an abusive relationship
Right.
with
Oh
this
my
man.
god.
Oh my God. Yeah, so they're at her house, and I would just like to say that I really appreciate how much Stephenie is constantly roasting Bella's computer. Like, she describes, like, Bella turns on her computer and Stephenie describes it as wheezing awake. You're just
God.
not giving this poor computer, like, a break, like, constantly with the roasting. And then she's like,
Answering an email from Renee.
and Bella at one point is like, "Oh, you have to let them live their own life," Bella says about her mother.
Yeah, she literally like, it's just you just hit over the head with it. It's like, I have no idea how I ever read this and wasn't like, what the fuck? Like because that's the thing is like when you're a kid and you read about like other kids being like quote unquote like getting to be adults and responsible, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's so cool. But like what she's like, I was a little frustrated that Phil let her go skydiving. I would have taken better care of her. Quote, I'd spent most of my life taking care of Renee. End quote. You have to let them go their
No.
own way eventually.
Oh my
And I was like,
god.
is this I literally but like again though, like maybe we aren't giving Stephenie enough credit. Like maybe this was intentional to make us not feel bad when Bella never sees Renee again at the end of this.
Maybe.
You know what I
I
mean? Because like it's
mean,
working. It's working.
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, even when I read the book, I don't think I ever like fully processed absolutely how shitty Renee was like the first time I read this, but I definitely did not feel bad that Bella never had to see
No.
her again in Breaking Dawn.
Well, Bella
Like, I
doesn't
was
even
like,
go to see her
whatever.
like when she has the choice to. Like she hasn't seen her.
Well, like
Yeah.
now.
Like, Bella's, like, still talking about Renee, and she's like, "I'd always been, like, the thoughtful one, the cautious one, like, and I, like, don't wanna make a life-altering mistake of, like, becoming a fan like, the way that Renee did." And, like, it just made like, I feel like that's the real reason that Bella is so, like, quote, unquote, "selfless" and, like, ready you know what I mean? Versus, like, a Rosalie who we're not supposed to like, and who's, like, quote, unquote, "selfish" or whatever, like, actually, like, cares, you know?
Cares
And I
about
feel like it's just
herself.
because, like, Rosalie had loving parents and Bella didn't. Like, that's what like, Bella just never
Yeah.
got to make mistakes, you know what I mean? Like, she's never
Yeah. Yeah, Bella doesn't give a shit about going to see Renee, and Edward is being a sneaky little bitch. And he whips out those plane ticket, those you can fly anywhere in the world plane tickets that Carlisle
Yeah.
and Esme got Bella for her birthday. And he's like, "These are about to expire." And I'm like, "What? Plane tickets expire in 9 months. It's been 9 months."
Yeah, that makes no sense. Well,
I
I
was
think he's
like,
just full of
"Why?"
shit. He's just full of shit.
No, he's full of shit, but I was like, Edward, that's not even a
I think
good
the plane
lie.
tickets were specifically to see Renee, but you could use them whenever, and I don't know if that exists because I
Oh,
would, like
maybe. I think that definitely does. I think they are a little bit more expensive.
yeah,
But, like,
well, that
you
makes
can
sense.
get, like, ones with, like, flexible, like
And I would just, like, never buy it. Yes, I wouldn't know about it.
I think because I looked it up after I read this book, because I was like, "No way." Yeah, but Edward is like, "Why don't we go to Florida this weekend? Let's just hop on a plane and fly across the continental United States in a weekend during the school year. Won't that be fun?
Right,
Ha 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 ha. No reason. Definitely not because of what
right.
Alice's vision really was."
Yeah, and he leads into this by, like, finding remember in New Moon when Bella claws out the stereo that she got for her birthday with her fingernails because she so doesn't want it. Edward, like, is like, "Oh, what's this?" And, like, picks it up from, like, the dust in the back of her closet. And then he's like, "Oh, it would hurt their feelings if they saw this." And I'm like, "All right, well, good. Maybe their feelings should be hurt. They shouldn't have gone along with your fucking convoluted scheme." And then that's how he leads into the airplane tickets. He's like, "Oh, well, at least you can use this other gift." Like, he's so freaking manipulative.
Yeah. But Bella's like, "No, like, I'm not going to see Renee. We can go see her after I graduate. Like, that's dumb. Why would we go right now?"
Mhm.
And then they all go downstairs, and Bella's making dinner, and sneaky little Edward is like, "Hey, Charlie, don't you think Bella should visit Renee this weekend?" And then Bella's like, "What the fuck, Edward?" Like, after it's all decided, they all, like, push her into agreeing to fly across the
Yeah.
United States this weekend, and Bella is like, "What the fuck was that?" And Edward is like, "Oh, you've been talking about your mom in your sleep. That's why. I just
Yeah.
care about you." And I'm like, the gaslighting is off the
Right.
charts.
He's like,
Like,
"I
this
knew you
man.
were too much of a coward to deal with Charlie, so I interceded on your behalf."
My
And Bella's like,
god.
"Something was off about this, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. Or maybe it was just my imagination running wild again like it had this afternoon."
No.
Oh my god.
No.
As soon as Bella, like, wins the fight with Charlie, because Charlie, like, once he finds out Edward's going, he doesn't want her to go. She's like, "Naturally, as soon as I won the fight, I began to feel guilty." And I was like, "Yep, classic." It's like that. It's like so many times this happens throughout.
It's
Like
so
constantly, yeah. One of the only Bella reactions I can like
like,
totally.
Bella's in the right, but still feels guilty.
Well, don't you always? That always happens. Anytime I win an argument about almost anything, I immediately feel guilty.
It
Like,
depends who
depends
the
on
argument is
what.
with and on what.
Oh, yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
talking about, like, substantive like, we were debating about, like, should woodpeckers be protected or something, but I mean, like, about preferences, I guess. Oh,
Yeah.
also, can I just say that at the end of Renee's email, she literally says, "You haven't said anything about Jacob in a long time." And literally my first thought was like, "Wow, that's unusually observant for Renee." And then the next sentence is like, "Charlie was prompting her, I was sure." Like
Oh, no. Oh, they're such terrible parents. Yes, and then after that, Charlie is like, "Well, my daughter is about to go cross country, even to visit her mom, but she's supposed to go cross country with her teenage boyfriend. Time to give her the sex talk." Meanwhile, I'm sitting here and I'm like, Bella and Edward haven't even French kissed. Like,
Oh,
when they
oh.
kiss again, please allow me to emphasize that when they kiss, it's just their lips pressing together over and over. There's no movement, there's no, like, cop and a feel, and it lasts for, like, 30 seconds before Edward gets too hungry and has to, like, back away. Like, it's so like, just the irony of Charlie being like, "Come on, kid, we gotta give you the sex talk." And I'm like, "Charlie, you
God.
don't even understand. Like, there has been no entrance in any one of Bella's orifices by any part of Edward."
Except when he, like, licked her tear that one time. That's, like, the most invasive we've gotten. Like,
No, but he doesn't lick it. He swipes it with his finger and then
it
puts it in
came
his
from
mouth.
inside her, so
We also sucks her blood, so, we're including that.
yeah. Charlie, like, he's like, "Ah, keep trying with Jacob. Like, I know you'll do the right thing. You're a good person." And, like, Bella rightfully, at least in her head, is like, "So it means I'm a bad person if I don't figure it out? Like, all right." And then, like, Charlie, like, continues this lecture and Bella's like, "Sure, sure." And then she's like, "I almost smiled. The sure, sure was something I picked up from Jacob." And I said this in our new moon episode. Like, I was like, "Oh, yeah, like, I noticed, like, Bella's saying sure, sure, like, she picked up from Jacob." And now I'm wondering, like, did I come to that realization on my own? Or is this, like, yet another thing that I remembered from Eclipse, but, like, my brain misfiled, like, where I learned it and, like, thought it was, like, my own observation? I have no idea. There's
It's
so many things like
possible.
that. Like, the fucking so there's, like, these invasive, like, bugs in our area called spotted lanternflies, and they're, like, very bad for crops. And, like, when we were growing up and still around here, there's also, like, Japanese beetles, which are also, like, very bad for plants and whatever. And, like, earlier, a few months, like, maybe a month ago, I was like, "Alison, like, it's kind of like the Japanese beetles are the OG spotted lanternflies, haha." And I thought at the time, I thought that was, like, a novel thought I'd
Like,
had.
what an
And
original,
then,
clever,
like,
like,
2 days
observation I've made.
and then, like, 2 days ago on my own Snap story memories, a snap from exactly a year ago came up, and it was, like, of Japanese beetles being like, "Are these the original spotted lantern?"
At least that one you can be sure it was an original thought. It was just an original thought that you'd
To
already
me.
had.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, like, original to you, like yeah. Yeah, I do wanna say that I am very annoyed at you for pointing out the "sure, sure" thing, because even though this book points it out, I don't think I really would have, like, internalized it if,
Mhm.
like, I wasn't already looking out for it because you had pointed out New Moon. Because Jacob says it so much. And it became
Oh, I
so
didn't even notice.
irritating for me every time. It was like every other sentence he was like, sure, sure. And I was like, you know,
See,
when like words start to like lose meaning because like
yeah.
you hear them, so like that's what
Yeah.
I was like, this like I hate it. Was so grating. It was like so upsetting for me.
See, I feel like I've been saying "sure, sure," and I have no idea if I started with that possibly novel, possibly not novel observation, or if I've always said it. Like, I don't know. I think I just said it, like, to you, like, 2 minutes ago. Like, "Sure, sure."
Yeah.
I would also just like to interject. I don't know. I forget when we find this out. Bella, like, hangs out with the Cullens at some point, but Edward and Alice play chess,
Mm.
and they play silently, so, like, they don't move any of the pieces or talk, and it's over in, like, 15 seconds because 'cause they're just, like, going back and forth, like, reading each other's minds and, like, thinking.
Yeah, and seeing the future.
And, yeah, how does that work? How far in advance do they see? Are vampires we know that vampires are, like, smarter and have, like, more computing power in their brain, but, like, it's literally impossible to, like, think more than a certain number of chess moves ahead of time. So are they, like, locking in each move as they go, or are they thinking through the whole game from all possible permutations? Like, what's
Yeah,
the
I
deal
don't
here? It's a
know.
I don't know.
Yeah, because Edward's reading Alice's mind, and then Alice is seeing the future of Edward's decisions.
Mhm.
But
And for some
Edward somehow
reason
wins. I don't know, I feel like Alice should always win.
right. Well, maybe I don't know. Well, chess isn't I don't know. For some reason, I believe that Stephenie Meyer, like, knows how to play chess,
She
unlike
does
J.K.
include it
Rowling.
quite frequently
Right,
as
right.
something that they
So,
play, like, casually
yeah.
in the
So she
background.
I
Yeah.
feel like she would have thought through this, so I don't know. I'm not gonna
You think
waste brain
Stephanie
power.
watched Queen's Gambit?
Yeah, probably.
You think she enjoyed it, or do you think it was, like, too scandalous for her?
Scandalous.
There's a lot of, like, drugs and premarital sex in that show. Queen's Gambit is a Netflix show with Anya Taylor-Joy about she's, like, a
I think
tortured genius
Stephanie
of chess.
loves her some drugs and premarital sex in fictional form.
Well, I thought we said, like, she doesn't read the smutty romance. I don't know. I forget what we said. I was gonna re-listen to all of our Twilight episodes and our New Moon episodes before we recorded this, but they're so long. And there's so many of them, and even at 2 times speed, like, it would take
I
hours,
feel
and
like
I
she
just didn't
had
have the
to
time.
have read some, like, 80s, like, 'cause and you don't get
Oh,
that, like I don't even know, like,
that's
that type of
true. I
hero
mean, their
without the smut.
dynamic is kind of, like, very
Oh, yeah.
almost like 80s romance in terms of, like,
Exactly.
this is a very abusive relationship.
Yep. Yep. So, this is when he disconnects her truck. She literally he leaves her for, like, an hour, and she runs out to her truck, and she's like, "I ran like a fugitive," okay? A fugitive in her own fucking house to her own fucking truck, okay? She gets there, the car's not turning on, and then I picture, like, she's, like, slowly turning her head to the right, like in a horror movie, and Edward's just sitting there silently, creepily, does not talk. When he finally starts to talk, he starts monologuing. He's like, "Do you have any idea how worried Alice saw you?" Like, just complete
Your
like,
future
Alice
disappeared.
is literally so disloyal. Like, Alice sucks as a friend to Bella. Like,
Well,
Alice
but
is not
Alice
Bella's
is very
friend.
much on the, like, I hate the werewolves train.
Sure, but she's also on the "let me snitch on Bella, and I don't fucking care anything like what Bella wants" train.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway,
off they go to Florida. Whoosh.
and don't worry, guys. It's not just Edward doing the gaslighting here. This time, Bella, the student, has become the master,
Yes.
and she gaslights Renee, which frankly I can't say Renee doesn't deserve it. But she gaslights Renee because Renee, even Renee, even literally the most selfish and blissfully unaware person on the planet, Renee, is like, "Hey Bella, maybe you should cool it with your obsessed boyfriend. Like maybe you
Yeah.
should take a little distance. Like you guys are really weird with each other." And
Yeah.
Bella's like, "Oh, mom, you're just making a mountain out of a molehill. Like you're so silly. Ha
You're
ha ha."
imagining things. Have you been reading your mysteries again? Or is it the sci-fi? You should stick to romance. Like,
Yeah.
and she feels guilty about it. She's like, wow, like she's so quickly like caves to my trivializing, especially because she's dead right. And I'm like, yeah, well, you should be pained because Edward's doing it to you. It's also so weird. Like the way that Renee describes it, she's like, you orient yourself around Edward, like without even thinking about it. When he moves even a little bit, it's like you're a satellite or something. And I'm like, what? That's such a weird, like, why is that the way their dynamic is? Like, so why isn't it? It's not like mutual. It's not like, and that's how Bella describes it in like New Moon too, right? Like her moon or whatever. And
Yeah.
Edward too. Edward in any situation, again, we said this before, in all the like metaphors or whatever, Bella is the orbiting object and Edward is the
Yeah.
center. And
Yeah.
Edward has the gall to be like, to literally not believe that Bella is capable of feeling as strongly for him as he is
Yeah.
for her.
Okay. And Renee tries to give her the sex talk too. And I just would like to point out that Bella has a thought about how she specifically gave Renee the sex talk 10 years ago, which means that
No, how
she
she
was 8 years
constantly gives
old.
her this. Yeah.
Like she's been giving her for Renee the sex talk for the last 10 years. So starting at 8 years old, Bella was giving her own
No,
mother the
no, no.
sex
I
talk.
thought she said that her mom gave her, she's like, Renee beat
Her
you to the
mom,
punch 10 years ago.
yes,
And she's like,
she
I've
says
been,
that to Charlie,
yeah.
but she also says in this scene later, like in this scene now, she has the thought that she's been giving Renee the sex talk for 10 years. What again, I would like to emphasize that Bella is 18 years old. What the fuck?
Oh my gosh.
What the fuck? Okay. Anyway, they get back to Forks somehow.
And Bella has some like frantic voice messages, or not even voice. They don't even have a voicemail machine. Like, this is just Charlie. I don't know. It's 2008. Like, what are you people doing? I don't
I
know.
guess Charlie just answers the phone every
Yes.
time. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
true. So anyway, Jacob has been trying to get in contact with Bella. Bella calls him back, and he's basically like, "Where were you? Like, are you going to school tomorrow?" And Bella's like, "Oh, he must have thought I was being turned into a vampire." And I was like, "Why wouldn't your immediate thought be that he just like wants to talk to you at school tomorrow? Like, what?" Which is the truth.
Because
Like,
he's
that
being
is.
weird. Because she picks up the phone and she's like, hello. And he's like being really weird. So it's clear that this isn't just like a friendly call. Like he's being suspicious. But yeah, they show up at school. And I was just going to say that like continually throughout this series, we keep getting these references to quote Edward being relaxed and joking. But like we never actually get to see it. It's always like Edward was relaxed and joking. But the beginning of the scene, something happens that turns him into a moody bitch. And I'm like, I don't know whether I believe that Edward's ever relaxed and joking. Because they roll up, he's allegedly relaxed and joking in the car, and they roll up at school, and guess who's at school to turn Edward into a moody bitch?
And Edward's first like words out of his mouth are like, "Would you stay in the car if I asked you to, Bella?" Like, he's not even gonna let her like talk to him on like neutral ground or whatever. And Bella's like, "No, fuck no." So they roll up, and I'm just picturing like, I don't know, just the way it's described it's as if like Jacob is like the head honcho of some like biker gang, which apparently like are real things.
I mean, he like
And just like
kind of
riding like a
is.
flaming, like I'm just picturing like for some reason like there's flames, like he's basically Ares, like the Greek god of war, right? Like in the middle of this, like I don't know, and he's just like, you know, whatever, rolled up.
He's like got his motorcycle, he rolls up, and this like just begins like this whole book. If you want to know the plot of Eclipse, the plot of Eclipse is actually not Victoria trying to kill Bella. The plot of Eclipse is Edward and Jacob are in a constant dick measuring contest, and like horny Bella is in the background like, ooh, do it again. That's the plot of Eclipse. Anyway, Jacob doesn't show up because he wants to talk to his friend. He shows up to lecture them all.
And he basically references like some shit that went down over the weekend, which again, Bella didn't even need this much detail to get her like, you know, intuition as it were. But this like confirms that she was totally right.
Yeah, basically Victoria showed up. Both the wolves and the vampires were chasing her. Emmett and Paul almost had like a little tussle and Victoria got away. But like that's what Alice saw Victoria come. And so that's why Edward like got her out of the state.
And Edward explains all of this to Bella in class, like 5 minutes later. He quote wrote an entire paragraph in his own personal calligraphy, end quote. And can I just ask, like, what is personal calligraphy if not just like that's what the rest of us call a person's handwriting, Stephenie? Like, what? Like, okay, my personal calligraphy, like it's nice handwriting.
Like it's like really, it's like a
what
really
makes
fancy
something
script.
What makes something calligraphy, like inherently, like versus just writing in cursive? I know there's a difference. I just don't know what it is.
It up. Calligraphy, it's a visual art. Oh, so there's like a visual component to it.
What? That's what handwriting is. That's what writing.
No,
what?
But I'm saying like you aren't just writing, you're creating art with the words. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's what it says.
And Bella's like staring at the page and she's like, oh, all of them had to be in on it. Like Rosalie, Carlisle, Esme. I'm like, well, isn't that the story of your entire relationship with the Cullens, Bella?
Yeah,
Like
like
they're
what?
all they
We're
will
all in on it.
like drop you at the drop what
Like a fucking
they'll take
hot
the opposite
potato.
side from you, yeah, at the drop of a hat. Like they will not even
Yeah.
think twice. They have no qualms about keeping you out of the loop.
But Jacob, like the standoff continues. This was before Jacob left. Like, first of all, he thought of how sad Bella was when Edward was gone in order
Oh
to
God,
torture Edward, which
yeah.
like fucked up, but also like
Deserved.
that's like creative, Jacob. Like, that's a pretty
Yeah.
creative thought. Like, well done. And Jacob is like, to Bella, he's like, don't worry, I still have your motorcycle. Why don't you come hang out and we can ride them? And I'm like, the audacity of him to bring up the motorcycles when he narked on her? Like, are you fucking
And Bella's
kidding me?
like, if I hadn't begged on Jake's behalf, Charlie would have thrown away the motorcycle, which just like, so Charlie's going to ground his 18-year-old daughter for riding a motorcycle, but he will happily return the same said motorcycle to the 16-year-old child who like
Built
told him
them?
about it. Like what? And this is just
Yeah.
like, I think something that we need to remember in this entire book and series is that Jacob is a child. Like Jacob is 16. Everyone, they're all children, but Jacob is a literal 16-year-old. Like he's a baby. And this is, I feel like this is just, I don't know, I can't like verbalize like why it just it's somehow along the lines of like the dehumanizing like the dogs and like painting them as super reckless. It's like wanting us to think of Jacob as like this big adult who like
I
needs
was
to
like
be
on the same level
judged.
as Edward.
Right. Right. When he's not. He's just not. He's only been on this earth for 16 years. Edward for 110.
Yes.
Bella at least for 18. You know, like it's not much better, but it's
Yeah. At
like
least Bella can vote.
at least Bella gets to graduate high school. Jacob doesn't even get that much. Like he's literally
Yeah.
and we find like Jacob is this is another thing we haven't found out yet. Like we don't find out until Eclipse. But apparently Jacob is like physically 25. Like you physically mature when you go through the werewolf thing. But like does that include your brain? Like is your frontal lobe or whatever? Like is that fully formed? Because I
No,
don't think
like I
so.
don't
He's
know.
I feel like his
Yeah.
mind is very much a child and it's just not fair. I feel like he's so much
I
is
just
put
feel
on
like
him is not
even if your frontal lobe is developed, so like right, you don't have like, which it's not because they don't have the impulse control. Like being a werewolf is very much like they have poor impulse control, so it's definitely not the frontal lobe developed. But even if your brain is fully developed, like
you don't have
part
the
of like maturity
experience.
is having experience, right?
Right.
Like even if you have this like a 16-year-old and a 25-year-old have the same brain, like they're still going to be vastly
Yeah.
different. The same way that like yes, my brain is fully developed, but someone who's like twice my age is going to have a lot more experience
Right.
than not me.
Yeah. So it's just like insane to be holding Jacob to this standard. And like everyone does it. Like this whole just the way that the story, the way Jacob, the way Bella, eventually the way like Charlie, everyone.
It's weird that Stephenie does this because she does like again, going back to the FAQ that I read on her website for this book, she is very much like Jacob. Like you have to remember that like Jacob is like a child. Like so some
Right.
of the things that Jacobs do like isn't that great, but like he is a 16-year-old and like he's thinking like a 16-year-old.
Mhm.
So Stephenie definitely was writing this book with like, yes, Jacob is a child, but like that's not how it comes across on the
No.
page. And I know that it is a thing with like adults reading YA, a lot of times like adults reading YA will be like, "Oh, these characters are such assholes. They're so selfish. They're so reckless. Like all this." And everyone's like, "Yeah, they're fucking children. Like you have to like
Right.
recognize that like these are literal children. Like you're reading a
Right.
book written for children." But I don't think that is this situation
No.
because the book
It's almost
doesn't
the
treat Jacob as a
opposite.
child.
Right. It's almost the opposite. It's like the book is holding him to this like higher standard that's like not, yeah. It doesn't make sense. No, it's just fucked. The whole thing is it's just a tragedy. Jacob's whole life has been tragic. Like he lost his mom
Yeah.
at 9. And I'm pretty sure also in I don't know if it's in the FAQs, it's somewhere Stephenie Meyer has said like, oh well, it didn't really affect him that much because he was only 9. It affected his older sisters more. But like didn't really
Yeah.
affect
But then he
Jacob.
has
I'm
to
like,
take
what the
care of
fuck are you
Billy
talking
because
about?
Billy's in an
Right.
accident.
Right. Like
Yeah.
and his
You
sisters
know.
like leave home. Like, yeah.
Jacob has had a fucked up life for sure. That doesn't excuse all the fucked up shit that he does, but he
No.
definitely has had a fucked up life. So yeah, so everyone thinks like Jacob and Edward are about to fight or whatever, but like the principal shows up and of course like the principal is like, "Oh, little white boy Edward with the good grades, like you must not be causing any
Right.
of the trouble, but this indigenous man clearly who is very tall and with a motorbike is clearly the one causing the fight." And I
Right.
was like, Oh, the racism is so strong in this scene. I mean, although frankly, it is probably very realistic. You know what I mean? To like what would actually happen.
Well, so later on, like Bella in math class, like overhears like Mike, Newton, Tyler, Ben, and Austin, like basically placing bets on like who would win. And like I appreciate Mike has like definitely chosen like the lesser of two evils. Like despite like his only encounter with Jacob being like the last year when Mike like puked in a bucket, I guess like Jacob allowing him to ride home in his car was a strike in his favor. Because even though Mike and Jacob were very much like balls to the wall, like, you know, dick measuring at that point, Mike is completely he's like Jacob would take him down, like gleefully rubbing his hands. Like
and I really like I want like a spin-off short story just about like this illicit like betting pool that like this group of boys has, because I guarantee you it's not just about Liz. I feel like they're constantly betting about they're like, oh, I bet like the gym teacher and the English teacher are gonna fuck. Like what do you think? Like here's when they start dating. Like we've definitely been running this underground gambling ring since freshman year.
People say boys don't gossip. Like, okay. Yeah, Austin and Mike are team Jacob. Ben and Tyler are team Edward. But also, what I would like to know, speaking of gossip, Mike is like, in making his case for Jacob, he's like, have you guys been down to the Push recently? Lauren and I went there a couple weeks ago, and Jacob's friends are all just as big as he is. Lauren and I went down there. So Mike went from Bella to Jessica to Lauren to, by the end of this book, back with Jessica. Something's going down.
Those frosted tips are insane. They're really,
is he
they're
a player,
the lady
or is
killer.
he just like, I need a girlfriend? It doesn't really matter.
He needs a girlfriend, and he is one of like 10 boys.
Right.
So like, and Ben and Edward are already off the table. So like, who's it gonna be? Eric, the chess club type?
Oh,
no.
Yeah. What's wrong with chess club? Wait a second.
No.
I know.
I'm
saying from Stephenie's perspective, if Edward and Alice are allowed to play chess club, it's just yet another example of like,
I think it was just like the shorthand. Like, you know, when someone says like a chess club type, like, you know what that means. You know, like it's I don't think that was Stephenie dunking on chess. Maybe she wrote that and then she was like, I don't actually know how to play chess. And then she learned chess. And like this whole book series was her like slowly becoming a grandmaster. Yeah.
Grandmaster. I mean,
Grandmaster Meyer.
Pastor. Yeah,
to like secretly
Meyer
be
has a nice ring to
Meyer.
it. Yeah.
Secretly be a chess grandmaster. She's actually like squaring off against some like Russian guy as we speak.
She's in that Budapest swimming pool. The bathing house. Apparently in Budapest there's these like bathhouses, like which are just look like big outdoor swimming pools, but they have chess, like built-in chess tables, and like old men. You know how old men play chess in the park? It's like great. They play it in the bathhouses.
Yeah. Tell us your like neighborhood chess stories. I feel like chess is like one of those like things. Yeah,
like everyone has a chess like, story. Connection. Yeah. Sure. When Edward has like told Bella like what went down this weekend finally, and Bella's like, well, like what that was a big overreaction. Like, why did you whisk me away? And she's like, what if like the plane, Edward makes a joke. He's like, with your luck, the plane would have gone down if you went alone. And Bella's like, what the fuck would you have done to save me? Like if the plane went down and you were on it? And Edward's like fully serious, like dead. He's like, wait until we're close enough to the ground and jump. Then I grab you and we stumble around like the two luckiest survivors in history. And I would just like to ask, like, what would that even do, grabbing her? Because, okay, here's the thing. It's a little morbid. But if you are in a plane crash, it does actually increase your odds. Like if you're able to somehow position it so that you land on top of another person, that is helpful.
Or on the seat. If you like land in your
both,
seat.
Ideally, that is helpful. However, that's assuming like a squishy person, human, not a marble rock. Okay. A. B. That him grabbing you is not going to slow down. You're still going to be at terminal velocity. Like you will be going 120 to 180 miles per hour, no matter what. Unless Edward's secretly Elastigirl and can turn into a fucking parachute. Like, what can he do? Yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense. It's like the classic like person falling from great height and like is stopped at the last second before hitting the ground. Like that, you'd be just as dead as if you hit the ground. It's like there's no.
Anyway,
so Bella like basically is like, what the fuck, Alice? Like, why didn't you tell me? And Alice is like,
Anyway, Bella goes home and we get a really chef's kiss metaphor about the Edward Jacob dynamic, in which Bella is stress rearranging magnets.
Oh my God.
And there are these two magnets that I'm assuming you all know how magnets work. Like if you tried to put the two sides, like they will push apart. Like, you can't put two sides of the same polarity together. And she, like, holds the magnets together. And she's like, why can't they just play nice? And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this, like, long
Well,
extended
first
metaphor.
she's, like, lining up all the magnets on the fridge in a perfect line, and she's like, "Oh, maybe I'm developing OCD." I'm like, "Wait, that's not what OCD is. Maybe you're autistic, Bella." Remember our previous theory? Because that is stacking and, like, lining things up. That
Mhm.
is that yeah. Anyway, and then she's like yeah, when she's, like, mad that the magnets won't, like, line up, and she's like, "For some reason, impending mania, perhaps. This really irritated me."
She's like, I could just flip it over, but that felt like defeat. I was like, Bella.
Well, it's just, like, back to the whole, like, "Oh, maybe I need therapy," like, in the back. I don't
Oh
know,
my
it's just
God.
insanity. So, Bella goes to work, and, like, Mrs. Newton is like, "Oh, this is awkward, like, you need to go home, we don't need you, blah, blah, but can you take these flyers out and throw them out on your way out? Thanks, like, are you getting paid for this, Bella?"
So the flyers are to save the Olympic wolf. And Bella sees it and she's like, oh my God, wolves, Jacob. And then she makes a spur of the moment decision and drives off to La Push. And it's a good thing that Edward is gone this weekend. And also Bella or Alice, like, is too far away to, like, be able to stop Bella before she gets to
I
the
I don't think
push.
we've ever actually gone into a deep dive on this on the podcast, but, like, we have calculated, like, the vampires in order to blur, like, so you
Okay,
she
okay,
Bella
okay.
constantly doesn't
Wait,
movie.
wait. So can I just say I'm so glad you brought this up because I did listen to Twilight Part 1 in which we make the promise of talking about whether vampires can travel at the speed of light within the context of Tyler's van, but then we don't talk about it when we get to Tyler's van. And I was like, no, like, we have to have this whole discussion. So let's have this discussion
All right,
now.
here's the crux in the simplest possible terms. Bella is constantly saying that the vampires move too fast for her to see, right? We get it with Tyler's van. We get it just like random offhand comments of like
Yes,
Edward
all the
like not
time.
acting human. Okay. That implies that they're moving faster than the speed of light, right?
Yes.
It's literally the
Yes.
implication. Okay. So we
Yes.
have that. So they're moving faster than what is it? Like 3.87 times 10 to the what the fuck?
I
Like
don't fucking know. Whatever the speed of light is.
anyway, C, whatever. However, at the same time, we know that it takes at like so if you're moving at the speed of light to get from Washington, for example, to Alaska, that's gonna take you a
A
fraction of a fraction of a
millisecond.
fraction of a second.
Yeah.
Right. However, we know like from the outtakes and stuff and like from so many other things, like it takes Edward, hours to run like
Like a
it's
few
not
hours.
right. And we also know that like obviously it's faster to travel by car, like to, when they go to Phoenix. So there's just all these things that they like it doesn't add up. Is what I'm saying. Maybe they can travel faster at the speed of light for, like, short bursts, but not sustained, which
Yeah.
doesn't really make sense because, like, they don't breathe. They don't have any, like, organic functions, so, like, there shouldn't be any, like, diminishing return. They don't get
I don't
tired.
know. I don't know. Maybe it's okay, well, maybe. So, right, they're stone, right? They don't have any inorganic material. Like, they're basically stone. So maybe it's the friction. They're also, we know their weakness is fire. So
Mhm.
maybe they can't maintain it for long periods of time because the friction that builds up could cause them to spontaneously combust.
Good one.
Like,
Maybe.
I'm glad that we talked this through because I hadn't thought about it before. I think we finally figured it out. They can only do it for short periods of time. They can't run that fast long term or they will explode into flames.
Or maybe they're not actually moving faster than the speed of light on the reg. Maybe the gaslighting is not gaslighting. Maybe Bella really is just exceptionally unobservant.
Maybe Bella just has like really bad eyesight, and so everything is blurry to her. And so she's like, "Yeah, the Cullens are blurry."
No.
She has like undiagnosed astigmatism. She just doesn't know.
Oh my god. Anyway, Bella makes it over the boundary line. Not faster than the speed of light, but fast enough, apparently. Even though like
Only
whatever.
going like 50 miles per hour.
Yeah, and she rocks up to Billy and Jacob's house and like they're so happy to see her, like whatever. And then Jacob and Bella go for like a traditional nice little walk on the beach.
Yeah. And Bella's like, before they have the conversation, Bella's like, I'm a different person when I'm with Jacob. And I'm like, yeah, but like not in a normal way where like everyone's a different person depending on like their relationship, but like in an abusive way, Bella. Like, I need you to, you're so
No.
close. You're teetering on the edge.
Yeah, well, but again, it goes back to the whole like, and I don't really feel it as much in this book, but like especially in New Moon. Like New Moon really it's accurate that the movie would be in, like, a sepia versus where the first one's in a blue, 'cause you really feel like when Edward comes back in the book, it's like it's back to the blue, like, back to the, like,
Yeah, back to the cold.
tense, cold, yeah, versus, like, happy, sunny, I don't know.
But now, unfortunately, Jacob has been plunged into ice water, and his
Yeah.
scenes are all cold too because he's like a dick.
But Bella definitely is, like, less tense around him still, I don't know how to
Yeah.
describe it, like,
Which
it's
is,
just
like,
less.
wild because of the number of times he crosses her boundaries
Oh
in
my god.
Eclipse. And, like, she never like, stops getting
Maybe
like, she
because
never
he's, like,
starts getting tense around
he's
him.
so open about it, so she doesn't have to, like, whereas with Edward, it's, like, mind games and manipulation,
Yeah.
just, like, nonstop.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But Bella's like, "I know I can get the full story about this weekend from Jacob, like, he'll tell me more than Edward would. He's not afraid of scaring me." And that just made me realize I spent the first, how far into the book is this? Like, at least a third, like, just railing in my notes about, like, gaslight. Edward sucks. He's gaslighting. Maybe let him. But at this point, I had the brain blast, and I was like, you know what? Wait a second. If it were me, I actually don't think I would have been mad. Like, I think I would have been happy that Edward was, like, trying not to, like, scare me with this because I personally like Bella a little bit in New Moon. Like, she's, like, out of her mind with worry about Victoria, and then she's, like, not so much here. But, like, for me, like, I would just be, like, constant. I would not be able to sleep for, like, this entire time. Like, I'd
Yeah.
be, like, waiting for her to walk through my like, I would not wanna know. But the difference is that I wouldn't wanna know, but Bella does wanna know. So, like.
Listen, to be fair though, this isn't just you because in text, when Edward tells Bella, she like is on the verge of a panic attack. Like she's
Right.
about to faint. Like she freaks out. Like she is
Yeah.
genuinely scared to her core. So like she's like, "Oh, Jacob wasn't afraid of scaring me." And I'm like, "Okay, like Edward still should have told you, but like to be fair to Edward, like you did have a very horrible, like, negative reaction when
Right, but
you
she would
found
rather
out
have that,
about
I guess,
this.
whereas with
But
me,
it's
like,
yeah,
if they
but
could
it's
actually keep the secret, yeah.
like, it's not like, "Oh, he's not afraid of scary" being like, "Jacob wasn't afraid of scaring me," implies that Bella's not gonna get scared, which is not what
Right,
happens. Like,
right,
Bella, like, literally almost, like, has a fucking stroke when she finds out. So, like,
right.
yeah. Edward's not totally coming out of left field here.
So, right after this, like, we get the story, and basically, Jacob's like, "Why? Like, you need someone, like, human," and Bella's like, "I guess I'm stuck with Mike Newton after all. Like, I was too mad to feel guilty yet," once again.
Listen, Bella's right. She was like, "Dude, you're not human too. Like, if this is really gonna be your argument that I should be with someone, like, safe and normal, like, it's not gonna be you either."
Bella is, like, constantly standing up for herself and then feeling guilty about it immediately. I, like,
Oh,
relate to
yeah, which
that
is
so
very I
much.
mean,
Yeah.
I relate to that a lot. Yeah, she also she's like she calls like Jacob out a lot for being like hypocritical about his like prejudice against like the Cullens because like again like the werewolves are like quote unquote monsters too. But she always her defense of the Cullens is always like they're the nicest people ever. And for some reason I'm like Bella, I just feel like there are so many other ways that you could do this argument in which I would be on your side, but like
Right.
this is not the approach.
No, and, like, show, don't tell. Like, yeah, we're constantly being told that they're, like, so great and, like, caring, and it's like we're
No, like, sometimes Esme gives her a hug, and, like, that's really the only
sometimes
thing, and Esme
Esme
got the
goes to
good
Portage,
Italian food
right, like, that is, yeah, top
and
notch,
gets
but,
the
like
mushroom rav, but, like,
yeah.
other than that, like, really no evidence.
Honestly, that would work on me, like,
Oh, yeah, if
yeah.
they fed me mushroom rav every time, I would be, like,
Especially faster than
100%
the
on
speed
their
of light,
side.
like,
Like,
yeah.
every time. It's like, "This
Yeah.
is great." Jacob is also like, "Oh, it would have been so great if you had just waited for me to go cliff jumping because, like, then because Alice can't see us, like, she wouldn't have seen that, and then the vampires never would have been back, and it would have been wonderful." And Bella is like first of all, like, Edward was coming back anyway, blah, 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 but, like,
Mhm,
also, like, "No, it wouldn't be wonderful, like, I'm way happier now." And I'm just
mhm.
like, I just Jacob is, like, such a shitty friend for that. And I get like, again,
Mhm,
he's, like, a child, but, like, he saw what Bella was like
mhm.
when Edward left. He saw how sad she was. And yes, she, like, got slightly better while she was with him, but, like, he literally would rather her continue being, like,
Yeah.
slightly sad and emotionally scarred and, like, depressed just so that he can, like, pressure
Yeah.
her into being with
'Cause, like,
him.
later on, he's like, "Oh, she would have been happy enough eventually, like, I had a game plan," which is just, like, on so many levels, like, he first of all, he was, like, scheming the entire time, like, he was never just, like.
Yeah. I hate that, and I
Right,
hate
yeah,
God.
and second of all, like, yeah, he's never even making the argument that she would be, like, fully like happy and like fulfilled.
Which
He's
it
like,
would be
she'll
the
be
same
happy
level.
enough, happy enough for me. Like,
Yeah, he's like, "I would be happy, so, like, I don't care."
right. It is a sacrifice I am willing to make.
So fuck Jacob. Anyway,
Yeah.
but I forget what triggered this, but this whole conversation just really gave me the vibe that, like, Bella is Jacob's mom, which I guess makes sense because she does eventually become his mother-in-law.
My God.
But, like, just the way she, like, thinks about him and how she's like, oh, like, the way she has to manage his feelings. I mean, she has to manage everybody's feelings, but the way she
Yeah.
manages Jacob's feelings just feels so, like, maternal to me. Like, it's just so
Mm.
their dynamic is, like, so weird that, like, Jacob is trying to make it sexual when I'm
Right,
like,
and he's,
"Bella's
like,
your
calling her
mom."
honey on
Like,
one
he's fully
hand.
your mom. Like, she's your
Yeah,
mom.
yeah, but then, like, Edward's Bella's dad, so, like, who's to say?
Daddy.
Daddy.
So, Jacob also gives Bella, like, some of the rundown
Like, they got the werewolf gossip, the
about the
hot
werewolf
goss.
gossip. So, he talks about how Quill has, like, joined the pack, and, like, Quill is frankly the only one who has the right reaction. Quill and
No,
eventually Seth
no,
have
they
the right
all
reaction to becoming
do.
a werewolf.
No, but he said he eventually he's like, "Quill thinks it's the coolest thing ever," and then he admits, he's like, "Most of them do. It was only me and Sam who were upset about it, and now Sam's fine about it."
Yes, but Quill was excited from the jump.
Yeah.
Everybody else, like, eventually came to be like, "Actually, no, this is, like, pretty cool." Like, they're not necessarily from the jump excited about it.
Oh,
Yes,
I
yes,
don't
yes,
oh, yeah,
yes,
I guess
because I
so, 'cause
wrote
I
that down.
yeah, 'cause they were
Yeah.
upset that Quill was gonna be
They're
yeah,
like,
sure.
"I'm upset, but, like, I have eventually come to recognize this is actually really fucking cool, and, like,
Yeah,
I'm into this."
yeah.
Quill is, like, gung ho. Quill and eventually Seth Clearwater is gung ho for it from the front. And I'm like, finally someone with a rational reaction.
Right. Well, no, and I think they all would have been it's literally, like, it's just because of, like, the gaslighting, like, non-sex ed,
Sam.
basically. No, it's because of the lack of sex ed. It's not sex, obviously, but it's, like, the lack of, like,
The love of
puberty
werewolf
education.
ed.
Because I think the reason Quill is so excited is because Quill was the last one of his friends. So he spent, like, months or weeks or whatever, like, pining after his friends and, like, knowing something was up and, like, maybe expecting something to happen or, like, hoping for something to happen that would let him be with his friends again.
Yeah.
And then that thing happened and he was happy, right? Whereas the other kids, it's just like, I pop into a fucking wolf, possibly maul and, like, disfigure my entire family in the process and, like, ruin my house maybe. Like, who's to
Yeah.
say? You have to run around in the woods for 2 weeks thinking I'm going insane, and for no reason, like, it could 100% be explained.
Yeah. Yeah, we get, like, Sam's, like, transformation backstory, how he, like, turned, and he obviously didn't know what was happening, and then,
Right.
like, he went missing for, like, 2 weeks, and this is when we find out that, like, him and Leah Clearwater dated and, like, were super in love, which was a little bit creepy because, Jacob says that they've been dating since, Leah was in freshman year. So I'm like, so Sam was, like, a senior,
Right,
basically,
I was
because
like, "So
Sam's in his
how old was
20s. I was like,
Sam?"
"Ooh, ooh, creepy," but obviously, like, we know Stephenie Meyer doesn't give a shit about that kind of age gap,
Right.
but, like, I was like, "Ugh, don't like that."
So the reason it sucked so much for Sam was because, like, his grandfather quote, he was alone. His grandfather died before he was born, and his father was never around, so there was no one there to recognize the signs. And I was like, "Well, well, well, if it isn't the patriarchy biting us all in the ass again." Like, it never occurred to anyone to tell a woman. Like, if you had just told,
No.
like, literally anyone else, it would have there's no reason for this to go down.
'Cause they're also like, "Oh, there's no way a woman could become a wolf." Meanwhile, Leah Clearwater is like, "Hold my bag," like, "Fuck you all."
And then even after Sam goes through this shit, he still doesn't warn the other kids about werewolf puberty. Like,
No,
that
he
should have
doesn't
been
tell
his
them.
first regime change. Like,
No.
dictate
Yeah.
number 1. Like, we're fucking telling people.
He finally yeah, because he finally turns back into a human, and then, like, how he, like, finds out, like, what happened is because, like, old Quill Atera, like, shakes his hand and is like, "Holy shit, he's running a fever. He's a werewolf." And
My
then, like, him and
god.
Billy and all the other elders, like, sit Sam down and, like, tell him the
Right.
news. And yeah, I just why don't you tell them? Why don't you tell them? Like, what are they gonna like, worst comes to worst, they don't believe it. But at least they have some sort of, like, actual basis. And I mean, they do tell them the legends, but I feel like it's different as, like, "Oh, yeah, our ancestors could turn into wolves," versus, like, "Hey, just letting you know, you have a wolf gene. I saw my grandfather do it. It may happen to
And, like,
you."
and the reason they tell them the legends is, like, ostensibly so that they'll be prepared and, like, stay away from the vampires, whatever. But, like, that's so you want them to believe it. but you don't wanna give them a reason to believe it that's sitting right there staring you in the face,
Yeah.
running around the woods at 2 AM every night. Like, what? Like, I just don't
He's right there.
possibly gonna pop into wolf form in school and maul you to death. Like,
Yeah.
what? It doesn't make any
Jesus
it's like,
Christ.
why? It's not because I would even okay, if she had really wanted it to be a secret, she could have given us some reason why it had to be a secret, and then no one gets to know the legends until you become a wolf. And then like, okay, fine. If there's like an actual right, but no, they like they simultaneously want them to believe and don't want to tell them. Like, what?
Yeah, it's so oh my god. It's so fucking stupid.
So speaking of the Sam backstory, like Jacob prefaces this by being like, "This is a long story," and I was like, "How can this be a long story? Like, if we already like, I just like, I can't believe this is the first time we hear about imprinting. Like, it's just insanity." And also speaking of the Bella Not Like Other Girls TikTok, that obviously instead of being friends with Jacob, Bella becomes friends with Leah because like
Yes.
why not? And they have so much more in common. And Leah's like, "Oh, my boyfriend like totally ditched me. Like we're in the same boat, whatever." So in that case, like Bella would already have known about Sam. So maybe that's another reason I'm like, why is this like a long story? Like what?
So basically I forget whether we talked about this new moon, but basically Leah and Sam were dating and then Sam didn't show a werewolf and like obviously couldn't tell her, but like they were working through it. But then like Emily, Leah's cousin,
Second
traipsed
cousin.
on down. Yeah, whatever. But like
The
her
close.
best friend, her like
Yeah.
best friend,
Sisters. Yeah.
basically sisters, came down and Sam imprinted and Leah doesn't know why. All she knows
Right.
is that her boyfriend fell in love with her
Yeah.
basically her sister and that her basal sister like returns the feelings
Yeah. It's so
and that
fast.
they're engaged.
It's so fast.
I mean, she eventually finds out, but it still fucking sucks. And then everyone's like, "Oh, Leah's always so grumpy. Like she's always like ruining the mood, the pack vibe, like in the mind group chat. Like she's such a bitch." And I'm like, "You got like." Bella does stand up for her.
Yeah,
Like
at
Bella
first.
is like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Leah seems like she has a right to be a
Right, and
bitch.
even Billy is, like, shitting on her and some yeah, and, like, well, no, Emily at first is like, "Stay the fuck away from me, like, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna betray." But the thing, like the thing that, quote, "fixes things"
Oh
is
my
Sam
god.
attacking her and scarring her. Like, Jacob's literally like, he was so upset, like, he was so shattered, and then somehow she was the one comforting him. Like, how sweet. I'm like, literally, what the fuck?
Like,
Like,
from what? Her
what?
deathbed? Like, she's
Like,
fucking, like, bleeding
what?
out. Actually, I'm sorry, they don't go to the hospital. Sue Clearwater is operating on her couch.
Yeah, they don't even take her to the fucking hospital. Like, what? Because Carla was there. And this is just, like, also the constant dynamic in this book with, like, Bella and Jacob, I feel like, is constantly, like, Jacob being shitty and then Bella somehow turning it into, like, something she needs to apologize for.
Yeah, that's their whole dynamic.
Also, Bella's like, "The way Sam looks at Emily, well, it reminds me of a look I'd seen in Edward's eyes when he looks at me," which is just, like, more add that to the, like, the marble pile of, like, evidence for vampire imprinting.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about imprinting. Well, first, I just want to say that Bella finds out that Jacob isn't aging and like the wolves don't age until they stop transforming. And she gets like royally pissed off that everybody is not
Yeah.
aging except for her. And I just really appreciate like that has really become a core part of Bella's personality.
Yeah. Why do they call it imprinting? Like
That's what I was about
animals?
to say. So I am obsessed with the fact that the werewolf soulmate thing is named after what baby geese do to their moms.
Yeah. And they don't even call it that in the original stories, like, later on we find out.
No,
They
they
call
call
it something
it
different, like
here. So
soul
basically, like
something.
imprinting is like you see them. It's like love at first sight, but stronger is how it's described or whatever.
Mhm.
And Sam has imprinted on Emily. This bloke named Jared has imprinted on this girl named Kim, like one of the Jared's one of the other werewolves, and then Quill has imprinted on a literal baby. Which table that for now. Put a pin in that for now.
Oh my god.
The werewolf thing being named after the geese. And this has been since the first time I read it. I can't stop thinking about that movie, and I don't know whether you
Oh,
remember it. I
yeah!
think it was
Yes!
right after
Yes!
okay, so it was one of the VHSs we had as a kid,
Yes!
possibly The Parent Trap.
It
And
was a Parent
that
Trap.
VHS, there were 2 movies that were being advertised.
Yeah.
One was Mighty Joe Young, which we're gonna put that aside, which is a big gorilla movie, but, like, not King Kong. The second was this geese movie in which
Yes.
these baby geese
It's based on a true story.
imprint on this girl, and then she has to raise them and teach them how to be geese, and then at one point she's like flying a plane and the geese
Flies
are
them
flying
home.
next to
I
her.
think it's called, like, Fly Home or something. It's called oh god,
Something.
yeah. Yeah, and it was like, oh, it was like fall tone, like sepia tone, like, the
Yeah.
dad was like, "You can't keep these keys," and she's like,
It
"Oh,
was
I'll
like
just
the
keep them,
horse movie, the
daddy."
classic horse girl movie, but, like, with geese.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, incredible.
If anyone remembers what that movie is called, I don't like, I feel like I could probably find it, but, like, does anybody else have a vivid memory of,
Yeah.
like, that being an advertisement on one of their childhood
And we
VHS
always
tapes?
watched them even though, like, we had the ability to fast forward,
Yeah, but it
like,
was so
right? It was
annoying to
clunky,
fast
you have to, like, stand up,
forward.
yeah, and, like, play with
Because
it,
if you
yeah.
wanted to
You
go
couldn't
fast, you couldn't
tell.
see the screen, and
Yeah,
then, like, if you didn't wanna go fast and it was just like, okay, it's,
yeah,
like, not actually going that much
yeah.
faster, whatever.
But it's not actually funny, actually, it's quite serious or whatever the fuck because imprinting is fucked up. It's literally, like, taking away all of your, like, what's the word? Like, free
Free
will?
will?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, let's just take Jared as the first well, first of all, we have Sam, obviously, like, that's fucked. The innocuous example of, like, Jared, quote, "imprinted on a girl he never looked at twice before." Like, before he was a werewolf, they sat next to each other in class, he had no interest in her. Afterwards, like, obsessed, like, he literally physical pain, like, he can't be away from her, which
Yeah.
means that he quite literally did not choose her when he had the free will to choose her, and now
Yes.
he's forced into basically, like, slavery, servitude, like,
Yes.
insanity.
Yeah. It's great for Kim because she had a crush on him the whole time.
But, like, what?
But no, it's so fucked. And then, yeah, Quill. So we're taking out the pin. Emily has her nieces over, and one of them is a 2-year-old baby named Claire. And Quill sees Claire and he's like, that's my wife. And I'm like, what fucking FLDS shit is this? Like, what fundamental Mormon shit is this, Stephenie? Like, this is not cool.
But even within the context of, like, even if Stephenie was like, "I need to have this be a plot point," why is it done in this way? Because she does make, like, a half-ass effort to be like, "Well, it's not at all romantic at first, like, Quill will be whatever she needs him to be, like, first he'll be, like, the best nanny ever, then he'll be her best friend, and then they'll be as happy as Emily and Sam." I'm like, "Alright, well, you literally just described grooming." A.
Yeah.
B, that's literally grooming.
Jacob says, quote, he'll just have to be patient for a few
Right.
decades.
No, but, like, if you are actually supposed to be whatever she needs you to be, I would make the argument that what a 2-year-old needs a whatever 18-year-old boy to be is on the other side of the country from her until she's at
Yes.
least 25. Like, how
Yes.
hard is that? Just, like, don't and I know that, like, there was just no reason to build in that element of, like, oh, it causes him, like, physical pain to be away from her. Like, no, if you're
No.
serious about, like, what she
What
needs
is
from
best
you,
for her?
she needs to have a normal life and then meet you when she's in her 20s. End of
Yeah.
story.
No,
Like,
it's like, I don't care how much you say, oh, it's not sexual. It's like, whatever. Like, the intention of you spending time with this girl is to eventually have a romantic relationship with her. Like, that is inevitable. Everyone accepts that as the ultimate end game. So, regardless of what your approach is when she's underage, you're still a fucking pedophile. Like, I really don't care whether you get a boner around her yet or not. Like, you're still a fucking
but the
pedophile.
horrible thing is that, like, the
They don't have a
characters
choice.
like, it's the tragedy is, like, yeah, you can't even it's Stephenie. It's, like, this is all on Stephenie because the characters, like,
Yeah.
literally don't have a choice and can't do anything
Yeah.
about it and are just forced into, like,
Yeah.
this hellscape. Not only do they not get their high school diplomas, they don't even
They don't have free will.
not not the same level, but oh
No,
my god.
I actually think that happens the next time her and Jacob come out that she finds this out, but I don't really care. We can talk about this now. And I just want to say that I'm honestly shocked that Jacob doesn't pretend that he is imprinted on Bella in
Right.
order to like
That's the
manipulate her to be
point.
with him. Because there are times when he's like staring at her
He's trying to make it happen.
and he's like obviously trying to force the imprinting.
Bella feels relieved that he hasn't imprinted on her, which, like,
Yeah.
how could you yeah, no, sorry, Team Jacob, like, you gotta it's not working
I don't
out.
know how you ever
Well,
thought that
Edward
was
would
going to be
know.
an
Edward would
option.
know,
Yeah, yeah, I guess I didn't really think about Edward. Because I was thinking like the wolves would know too, but like would they narc?
yeah, I
Um,
doubt it,
but
maybe.
it's just so rich of like Jacob to be like, I want to be with Bella, even though imprinting is something that could happen and something that seems to be relatively common. Like a third of the wolves at this
Well,
point have
not
imprinted.
mm,
A third of
yeah,
the wolves have
yeah,
imprinted. It's like rich of him to be like, yeah, I want to be with you. Like, I want to take you away from this man that you love and who clearly makes you happy, regardless of how abusive the relationship it is.
yeah.
Like, she's clearly happy and satisfied with Edward. And Jacob's still like, no, pick me instead, even though there seems to be a very good chance that I will one day ditch you. And we know that's not going to happen because he's gonna imprint on Bella's fucking daughter. But like, Jacob doesn't know that.
Well, why does Jacob not get to like make his own choices while he's still allowed to? Like, does he really have to like wait around for like the possibility and like not actually live his life?
Sure,
even when he still
I
has,
understand that, but again, like he's
I know,
detrimentally affecting Bella in this case. Like, it's not just Bella as like some unattached girl that he has a crush on and wants to like date. Like, he's asking her to break up with like a boyfriend that she actually cares about.
That's true. We've mentioned that like Jacob's physically 25, but up until this point, we still didn't even know about the werewolf voluntary immortality. Like, this is when we find out that the werewolves don't age, but then like if they stop transforming.
And at some point, what is the context for this? Can you tell me where Bella's like, and I'm a Virgo? What is the context for that?
Because Bella's like, why can't you guys all just get along? And Jacob's like, listen, Bella, I'm a werewolf and he's a vampire. And Bella's like, and I'm a Virgo. Like, she's like, I don't care. Yeah,
which is honestly like fun, like nice, Bella. That is a funny joke. Like, Stephenie, that is one of the zingers that you actually is a zinger. However, when I first read this book, I didn't know what a Virgo was. I was like, what the fuck is that? And I never looked it up. I would like to say that I just assumed it was some like, I don't know, some like weird where I was like, okay, I thought, oh no, I'm sorry. What I thought, I was like, oh, Virgo sounds like virgin and Bella's a virgin. Like, okay, that's what it is.
Yeah. Every book needs to come with like the Penguin Classics, like Pride and Prejudice index, where like, you know, you can flip to the back.
There's like endnotes.
Every term. Yeah, every book needs to come with endnotes. And I just think Jacob at this point like is sympathetic to Leah. Like, he's like, yeah, Sam broke Leah's heart. Like, he broke every promise he ever made her. Like, he has to see the accusation in her eyes and like know that she was right. And like he's like, Leah got the worst end of the stick. Like, she puts on a brave face. She's going to be a bridesmaid. And I'm like, oh, okay. Why the fuck doesn't Jacob have more empathy for Leah like ever again? Like, why? Where does this go? Out the window. And Leah's already a vampire, a werewolf at this point. So like,
but Bella doesn't know that. Jacob's not.
I know, but Jacob knows. Yeah. I know, but Jacob knows. And Jacob is like empathetic for her now.
I guess she's just like so annoying in like the werewolf mind group chat that like,
justice for Leah. And there's like, no point. There's like no point to Leah's character except to be shit on. Like, there's no arc. There's no like happy ending. We don't get like she literally just exists as like a perpetual punching bag to like occasionally.
But Stephenie has said that she like, if she were to write like a sequel, you know what I mean? Like a spin-off, like post Breaking Dawn, that like Leah would get some sort of story. But yeah, Stephenie Meyer hates Leah. Justice for fucking Leah.
Yeah, she's gonna write fucking Renesmee and Jacob. Like, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear Leah. I want to see Leah. I want to see
Leah with a girlfriend, like in the Seattle, maybe fighting crime. Who knows? You know what I mean? Like, she could, like, her and her girlfriend fight crime. Her girlfriend's
not
like
in
a
Seattle.
former.
I want her to like move to fucking like Hawaii or Boston. Like, get the fuck away as far away as possible. At least a continent. Like,
Leah, you know, werewolves of London. That's what I want.
Werewolves of London, or
bisexual werewolves of London. That's what I want.
She moves to New Zealand and joins the pack. We're werewolves, not swearwolves.
Not swearwolves. Yes.
Staten Island. No.
Yes. That's what I would like. Somebody write that for me. Leah and her girlfriend fighting crimes in some city that is not in the Pacific Northwest.
I don't even need her to fight crimes. I want her she can just like have a garden and like
I want her to have a garden, but then also like fight crimes.
But
like in a fun way. Like, you know, in a fun, like it's a crime comedy. You know, it's not like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, she's just like, you know, solving mysteries like Nancy Drew. Her and her girlfriend are like Nancy Drew in it. Up there. Like, that's what I want. Like Scooby-Doo, there's a Scooby-Doo gang. They're like stopping the local real estate developer from like tearing down the tree by dressing up as a ghost or something. You know what I mean? Like, uses her werewolf form 0% of the time in this case. Like, just like, you know, justice for Leah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So then Bella finally leaves. So she's got to go help address envelopes with Angela.
She's like, oh, I promise to come back next time Edward's away. And I'm like, all right, you shouldn't have to like
wait until your boyfriend's away.
Like, okay. She goes.
So she goes, and I think
oh my god. So
Edward is tailgating her, quote, 2 to 3 inches behind her the entire time. And she's literally like, she's walking up to Angela's house. She's like, oh my God, is he gonna like pop out of the
Yeah,
woods?
she's, like, terrified, and then he doesn't even stop. He just keeps creepily
He
driving
just
past. And Bella's like, "I cringe at the thought of going home early." Like, what? And then she goes inside, she's like, "I feel a little bit less panicked. It's easier to breathe. It feels so nice to be here, somewhere normal."
Yeah, she says, I hadn't realized I was so starved for human connection. And I was just like, Jesus fucking Christ, Bella. Remember, well, I forget what it was. Was it Twilight or New Moon when my word of the day for my notes was like this bitch, and I was just constantly referring to Edward as this bitch. My word of the day, my like word note of the day for Eclipse is Jesus fucking Christ.
Oh my
The number of
god.
times it pops up in my notes.
Oh my
I'm just like
god.
constantly like, I cannot.
Yeah, I just like, what the fuck? And Angela is like the 15th person in this book, actually more like 3rd, but to be like, "Is something wrong, Bella? Like, you seem anxious." Like, everyone keeps asking you that, Bella. At some point, you might consider that they're actually the ones who are right.
Yeah,
Like,
that you are
I know we've been
anxious.
saying don't get gaslit, but, like, when it's the majority of the people in your life who know you, it's possible that you're the one who's missing something. Like,
Oh my god. She's also Angela's like they talk about how Jacob showed up, and Angela like is basically like, yeah, well, it was obvious that like Jacob is in love with you. And so like Edward's
mhm.
probably just like really jealous. And Bella's like, no, like
Yeah.
just the fact that Bella is so obstinately and purposely oblivious to the fact that Bella or that Jacob is in love with her is just
That
so I'm
Edward
like
is
like
jealous.
she's so like she's purposefully like
No.
refusing to acknowledge that because she doesn't want to have to contemplate what that means for their friendship.
Wait, no. I think she, like, accepts that Jacob is in love with her at this point. What she doesn't wanna admit is that Edward is, like, jealous and not just, like, being quote unquote "overprotective."
That's what Stephenie was saying in her FAQ. I would like to say like one of the questions was like, what are the characters' greatest flaws in this book or something?
Mhm.
And it was like Bella like not really knowing herself and like how she feels about Jacob and how she feels about Edward, like whatever. And then like Edward like and his overcorrection because like he went from
Right.
like super protective at New Moon and leaving her to like being very laissez-faire like at the end of this with Jacob and like
Right.
not actually just admitting his feelings that he's like jealous and he wants Bella to choose
Mhm.
him or like whatever and like letting her get too deep with Jacob.
Mhm.
But then Stephenie then Stephenie was like, Jacob doesn't have any flaws. Jacob
What?
Jacob is just he just has one goal and one hope, and that's to save Bella. And I was like, so Stephenie, oh, I know they're your characters, but like you joshing me right now? Are you kidding
But
me?
Stephanie likes Jacob, I guess,
She loves
definitely.
Jacob. And
Yeah.
that's when she does right. She's like, you have to remember that he's 16. And I was like, Stephenie, I will give you that. I will give you that he is a child.
Yeah.
But he has some Jacob has some real character flaws. Like he does some manipulative ass shit, even for a 16-year-old.
No, and honestly, I put a lot of it on Billy, like, like, not treating him like a child literally ever and, like, not being a I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean, we
It's
talked about that Jacob and
yeah, the
Bella were also like,
parallel.
we're both parentified.
So Bella chats with Angela. Angela's like, "Will you email me when you go away to school next year?" And Bella's like, makes a joke. I'm like, "Why can't you fucking email her?" Like, are they planning to like fake her death at this point, or are they just gonna like
I don't know.
so
Like just move
weird?
away. I
You're
don't
so
know.
weird, Bella. Like, why? I don't know.
You can email her. That's
I know.
fine. Like there's why
I
not?
know.
So then she comes back home.
Yeah, and she's Gumby on the way to the truck.
She comes back. She goes into her room. She like trudges up to her like room. She's like nervous because she knows Edward's gonna be there. She comes up, she opens the door. Edward is brooding specifically in like the one shadow of her room. And he stares at her for more than 2 minutes straight. Like specifically, she's like, I counted to 100. And before that, we have at least 20 seconds, like before she starts counting. So this man is brooding in the shadows, staring at her. He's so weird.
And then he's literally again like back to like the like exasperated parent. He like pinches the bridge of his nose and I never understood that. Can you explain? Okay, people will be like pinch your nose to stop a fucking nosebleed. Okay, there's no part of my nose except for the bottom part where that would do anything. I never fucking understood that. There's bone, and then above that, there's like you can squish the skin, but there's nothing to
There's for
squeeze.
me, there's right above the nostrils, like right here, like right
Yeah.
slightly above the nostrils where it's like
Oh,
melds
yeah.
from cartilage into
Oh, yeah.
skin.
No, that's the part that I always thought it'd be logical to squeeze. That is not the part that any adult in my life has ever told me to squeeze on the rare occasions I've had a nosebleed. They always yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that would make sense. That's never been no
But
one
that's
has
not what
ever
Edward is doing.
no, I'm just saying this is for my own edification. Like, I feel like I've just been, like, misled my entire life
I
into
personally
squeezing the bone.
pinching the bridge of your nose does not do anything to stop a nosebleed, in my opinion. Friends, if you've never seen She's the Man, allow me to introduce you to the tampon method of just if you don't have a tampon available, just stick a wad of toilet paper and just walk around. Like I
Your
long
nose.
ago, yeah, up your nose. I long ago stopped like just sitting around pinching my nose. I'm like, I got shit to do. I don't have time for this.
And Edward's like he's like, "Do you have any idea how close I came to crossing the line today, to violating the treaty? You know what that would have meant." So, threatening her with harm to himself and others to get her to comply.
Yes.
Nice. First of
Yes.
many in this
Textbook.
fucking book.
Textbook. No, that's not the first. When he disables her truck, he's like, "Do you want to start a war?"
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
What?
Well,
It's
but,
not
like,
the
this is
first time he does it.
explicitly, like, I'm gonna go, like, get myself killed,
Yeah.
like and I was like, "Eclipse is trash, but not for the reasons I previously thought, like, Edward is the villain, but don't worry, Jacob's the villain too," and, like,
They're
everyone
all the
Ella yeah,
villain.
yeah. Am
Everyone in
I the
Bella's life is the
drama?
villain. Everyone, you know what? Everybody except Seth and Leah Clearwater and Bella are the only blameless ones in this whole book.
Yeah, Edward's flaw is that he's just literally incapable of ever believing that anyone could ever know better than he does, like, even his quote, unquote "partner." Like, he just
Yeah. He's just like, and it is said multiple times, like he's like Alice says it, Bella says it, like Alice says it constantly. She's like, don't you know that like Edward is prone to like overreaction? Like he there's like very little moderation in Edward's
right,
personality. Like he swings like one way or the other way
right,
completely. So at least someone acknowledges it.
right. And then Alice also has the gall to be like to some at some point later on in the book, she's gonna be like, "Bella, like, you know that self-control or, like, responsibility is a very big part of being a Cullen," like, as if Edward has ever exercised a modicum of
No.
responsibility or
No.
self-control, like
I mean, he did when he didn't eat Bella that one time.
yeah, right, that's true. In
Protecting
that
her, like
context, but as far as, like, doing, like, when he
yeah,
want
in
yeah.
terms of not eating people,
Yeah.
Edward's got it down pat now.
That's, like, one tiny slice of, like, the wide swath of and Bella's like she's like, "Is this just, like, a testosterone fueled, like, you know, dick measuring contest, basically?" But, like, Eddie doesn't make testosterone, presumably. Like, what's going on up there?
What is it? Like, I don't
And
know.
Bella and I also enjoy this. Bella's like, "I refuse to be affected by territorial disputes between mythical creatures. I don't care who's a vampire and who's a werewolf. If Angela turns out to be a witch, she can join the party too." I was like, "Oh, what a tease." Like, that should have been foreshadowing.
Shivan a witch. I'm just I like I said, I'm just saying Vampire Diaries. There are witches in Vampire
Yeah.
Diaries. I don't know whether there are werewolves, actually, now that I think about it.
There
No, there
are.
are werewolves. There are
There are,
werewolves in
yeah.
Vampire Diaries.
Yeah.
And there are witches, and one of the three best friend trio in the original is a witch. So
Mhm.
Angela Stephenie, you goddamn tease. Where's Angela's witch spin-off book? Oh, Angela eventually moves to London. No, Angela and Leah are girlfriends. And Leah's a werewolf and Angela's a witch. If I listen, there must be fan fiction out there that's like Angela and Leah set up. There's gotta be. And if there is, please send it to me. I'm begging you, please send it to me.
So Edward's off to hit his reserve, his Northern Californian reserve with a mountain lion problem. And Bella's like, "Oh, good, good. Like, I can go see Jacob," like, scheming. She, like, calls Jacob to tell him. And then the next day after work, instead of Edward, it's Alice picking her up in Edmund's, like, off like, backroads giant Jeep,
Oh, is
right?
it?
I
I
think
didn't
so,
even
in the
process
huge
that.
car with the music. She's like some unidentified rap song pounding, and Alice singing along an octave higher. And this is something, from, like, Twilight Talk, she pointed out, like, do you have any idea what an octave is, Stephanie? Because, like, singing an octave higher, like, that's like let's say the song is, like Biggie, 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 can't you see? Biggie, 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 can't you see? The guys are where just energize me. Like, what? No, sorry, it's not rap. It's just bass shaking music, whatever that
Okay.
means. Like,
My Chemical Romance.
yeah. Do you believe in life? Do you believe in life?
I'm sorry if that's activated anyone's tinnitus. So Alice has kidnapped Bella. She locks her in the car so she can't escape, because you know that, like, if the car hadn't been locked, Bella definitely would have done like a drop and roll out of the door.
Like a fucking,
like Steve Carell in Crazy Stupid Love. Yeah.
Stop the car. Stop the car. Oh my God, I'm begging you. Stop the car.
So they're having a forced slumber party, and this is when Esme orders the good Italian food from Port Angeles, and I was like, okay, well, at least Bella gets some mushroom rav out of this forced sleepover.
Can I just say, so Alice is being paid off to kidnap Bella by Edward getting her the yellow Porsche from Italy that Alice stole in her Grand Theft Auto, that she was already gonna get for Christmas, right, for saving his fucking life. But all it took is it getting moved up a few months. That's all it took for her to betray Bella like this.
Well, 6 months. It's like June.
Sure. But like, she was gonna get it.
Sure.
I'm just saying. Delayed gratification is not any of their fortes.
No. I feel like this is a good place, because the next thing is Rosalie's backstory, and so we're gonna leave you on a little teaser. Expect that. And Rosalie is another one we need justice for. She's a little bit too racist to be with Leah, but like, still justice for Rosalie.
Is she racist?
She literally, in Breaking Dawn, carves a fucking dog bowl with Jacob's name.
Okay. And when you said that, I was trying to think through her backstory. Like, I thought you meant something.
No. Like, well, but she also grew up in like upper class upstate New York. Like, Rosalie was definitely a little racist, like in the 1930s. Like, there's no way she wasn't. Yeah, so that's that. That's where we're gonna end off today on a little cliffhanger. I would like to say that I have quite a few notes left, and I haven't actually finished reading the book, so I'm gonna have even more notes for the end. Oh no. Is this gonna be a 3-parter?
Maybe. All right, so Catskill next week or 3 weeks. Maybe on that note,
tune in for an undisclosed number of weeks to listen to us finish talking
Alison,
about
where can
Eclipse.
they find us?
You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at We Read It One Night, Twitter at We Read It Podcast, and you can email us, wereaditonenight@gmail.com, and you can send us your listener recommendations. I know that we're always going to do all the Twilight series, but like, we have heard from people who are like so excited for like the next books in the series, so this technically counts as a listener suggestion. And you can also leave us a rating and review wherever you listen, because there are a lot of places that let you leave ratings and or reviews, and you should, because you should manipulate that good algorithm. Give us 5 stars, thank you. And Rachel, what should they say to reference this episode if you're listening to this and you decide to review?
Ravioli, give me the formioli.
Okay. Right, ravioli, give me the formula in your review if you're listening to this episode while writing it. And don't forget to donate to the Quileute Move to Higher Ground Fund.
Godspeed, comrades.
Godspeed.